Dead mind piecing the arc. Silas, jilted by Eliza's choice of Thorne, orchestrating the hauntings to reclaim his opus, using Miriam as bait to draw Holmes back into the fray. Lydia, Silas sneered. Street singer like your soprano. Pure tone, unbroken by forgiveness. The addict's shadow loomed in Holmes's chest, the urge to seize control, to solve alone, injecting isolation like morphine. But Eliza's words echoed, community men's. Watson's presence grounded him, the lantern's glow a divine breach in the dark. No more solos, Holmes said, tossing the shard to the floor. It shattered against stone, releasing a swell of harmony, not ghostly dirge, but living voices from above. Thorne's choir, Eliza's trill, even Miriam's giggle filtering through cracks. Silas lunged, but Watson tackled him, the baton clattering. Lydia's chain snapped under Holmes's deft fingers, her sobs turning to gasps of air. As Lestrade burst in with constables, lanterns flooding the crypt, Holmes knelt by Lydia, wrapping her in his greatcoat. The music. It freed me. Upstairs, the group reunited in the sanctuary nave, midday light streaming through stained glass, painting redemption in crimson and gold. Thorne embraced Silas's confession like a prodigal's return, Blackwood vowing restitution. Eliza sang a soft Ave Maria, Miriam clapping tiny hands, her doll perched on the pew. Holmes stood apart, pulse steadying, the void within filling not with chemicals but quiet grace. Yet as Silas was led away in irons, he slipped a final note into Holmes's pocket. The true composer waits beyond the encore. Listen in the silence. Watson clapped his shoulder. Victory, old friend. But your eyes say the puzzle lingers. Holmes nodded, gazing at the rafters where faint mists swirled, one verse unfinished. Vespers approach. What hymn calls next? Vespers bells tolled across Trafalgar Square as dusk bled into the winter night, their sombre peal slicing through the thickening fog like a reminder that some melodies refuse to fade. Holmes lingered in the nave of St. Martin in the Fields, the stained glass above casting fractured rainbows on the polished pews, while the congregation filtered out, murmuring prayers of gratitude for the Christmas miracle unveiled. Silas was gone, hauled away by Lestrade's men, his confession unraveling the threads of deception. The rigged rafters echoing recorded hymns, the phosphorescent dust mimicking spectral glows, Lydia chained not by ghosts, but by a mad composer's grudge. Yet the note burned in Holmes's pocket, its ink still damp with unspoken challenge. The true composer waits beyond the encore. Listen in the silence. Watson approached, his limp more pronounced from the crypt scuffle, face etched with the quiet triumph of a man who had seen too many battlefields yield to peace. Old chap, you've done it again. 39 voices silenced, not by spirits, but by your relentless mind. Time for a brandy at the Criterion, eh? Holmes's grey eyes drifted upward, tracing the vaulted rafters where mist had swirled like half-formed notes. Not silenced, John. Redirected. Thorne emerged from the vestry then, his wire-rimmed spectacles perched precariously, thinning hair damp with relieved sweat. He clasped Holmes's hand, voice quivering like a violin string plucked after silence. Detective, you've saved more than our choir. Blackwood's ledgers are clean now. Restitution begins at dawn. And Eliza, she sings for Vespers. Join us. The invitation hung, simple yet weighted, pulling at the frayed edges of Holmes's isolation. His fingers twitched, the phantom itch for the 7% solution clawing upward from his veins, a tempter as old as his triumphs. But the sanctuary's warmth pressed in, the scent of beeswax candles mingling with pine from the Christmas tree, the faint echo of children's laughter, where Miriam now played near the altar, her doll cradled like a talisman. Community men's, Eliza had said. He nodded, surprising even himself. Lead on. They settled into the front pews as the choir assembled, 39 souls in crisp robes, their faces alight with a forgiveness Thorne had barely earned. Blackwood mounted the pulpit, his portly frame steadier now, clerical collar straightened, trembling hands clasping a Bible worn smooth by generations. My flock, he began, voice booming yet cracked with humility, We gathered here on Christmas Eve chasing phantoms, fearing the rafters held more than timber. But in our darkest hour, truth pierced the veil, not of ghosts, but of our own failings. Embezzlement shadowed these walls. Jealousy poisoned our harmonies. Yet grace redeems the broken reed. Holmes shifted, the vicar's words stirring sediment in his soul. Grace. A variable he had dismissed as sentimental fog, yet here it stood, embodied in Lydia's tentative smile from the soprano section, her bruises fading under Eliza's arm. The fallen street singer, pure tone unbroken by forgiveness. Silas' venom had twisted her into bait, but release had come not from deduction alone, but from Watson's tackle, Lestrade's lanterns, even Thorne's baton stilled by confession. Eliza stepped forward, raven hair catching the candlelight, emerald eyes locking on Holmes with unspoken thanks. Her voice rose, Ave Maria Gratia Plena, pure and piercing, weaving through the nave like sunlight through fog. The congregation leaned in, breaths held, as if the notes could mend the fractures of the year. Holmes closed his eyes, not in prayer but analysis, the timbre flawless, yet laced with human tremor, the vibrato a testament to scars survived. For the first time logic yielded to wonder. No cocaine haze could rival this clarity. As the hymn swelled, her shadow detached from the side aisle, Miriam's mother, gaunt and grateful, approaching with a bundle in her arms. The child reached out, tiny fingers brushing Holmes's sleeve. "Sing," she giggled, mimicking Eliza's trill. Holmes froze, the touch electric, unbidden memories flooding. His brother's abandonment, the Baker Street hearth cold without hearth-fire of kin. Watson leaned close. See, even the smallest verse completes the score. Vespers concluded in a hush, the final amen lingering like dew. Blackwood descended, gripping Holmes's shoulder. "You've unmasked our sins, Mr. Holmes, but tell me, does reason allow for the divine score beneath?" Holmes paused, the note from Silas crumpling in his fist. "Reason demands evidence, Vicar." Yet silence. Silence reveals the composer. He crushed the paper, letting it flutter to the floor like a discarded hypothesis. Outside, the fog had lifted, stars pricking the velvet sky above Trafalgar's lions, gas lamps flickering like vigilant sentinels. Watson and he walked arm in arm toward the Strand, the chill nipping at their coats, carriage wheels hissing on wet cobblestones. "No more cases tonight," Watson ventured, mustache twitching with hope. "One unfinished," Holmes murmured, pulse steady, the void within bridged not by vials but voices. But dawn brings new riddles. And perhaps partners. Eliza caught them at the portico, her breath clouding in the cold. "Mr. Holmes, a gift." She pressed a small music box into his palm, its mechanism whirring to life with a faint, harmonious chime, the choir's motif, now mechanical yet pure. For the silences between cases, listen when the fog thickens. He pocketed it beside his pipe, the weight grounding. "Thank you, Miss Hawthorne." For the harmony. Thorne and Lydia waved from the steps, Blackwood's blessing trailing them into the night. The church doors closed with a resonant thud, sealing redemption within its timbers. Back at 221B, fire crackling in the grate, Holmes sank into his armchair, Watson pouring brandy with a nod of profound relief. The detective's fingers drummed the armrest, not in agitation but rhythm, a subconscious echo of vespers. The cocaine syringe lay untouched in its case, dust gathering like forgotten evidence. "John," he said softly, raising his glass, "to verses completed, and those yet to unfold." Watson clinked glasses, eyes misting. "To us, Sherlock, flawed conductors but playing on." As snow began to dust the window panes, Holmes wound the music box, its melody filling the room, a bridge from rafters to redemption. The puzzle of St. Martin in the Fields closed, not with a slam but a sustained note, promising that even the greatest minds find harmony in surrender. The true case, he realized, had been his own, from solitary genius adrift in fog to a man attuned to the grander composition. Grace and effort, community essential, no one beyond the score. Yet in the quiet hearthglow, a final whisper stirred, Had the mist in the rafters truly dispersed, or did one pure voice linger, waiting for the next seeker? Holmes smiled faintly, content in the mystery. Vespers had passed. Matins awaited. This story is created by a young creator whose dream is to reach 1,000 subscribers. If you enjoy these tales, subscribing helps more than you know, and he thanks you for it. Subscribe for more cases that test your deduction skills. The fog clung to Trafalgar Square like a shroud on Christmas Eve 1892, thick and yellow under the sputtering gas lamps, muffling the distant toll of Big Ben into a hollow dirge. Sherlock Holmes stumbled through it, his deerstalker cap askew, collar turned up against the relentless drizzle that seeped into his bones. His hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the fresh puncture on his forearm, hidden beneath his sleeve, where the cocaine's fire still flickered weakly against the gnawing void within. The streets echoed with faint carolers, their voices fractured by the mist, but one sound cut through sharper, purer, a choir rising from St. Martin in the Fields like an unending wave, harmonious and relentless. He paused at the church steps, grey eyes narrowing. The singing had begun at midnight mass, or so the urgent note from Watson had claimed, delivered by Hansom just as Holmes's syringe emptied. 39 voices, sopranos soaring, tenors anchoring, basses rumbling deep, blending in, hark, the herald angels sing. Yet dawn had come and gone, then noon, evening, and now night again. No pause for breath, no falter in pitch. Impossible. Holmes's mind raced, cataloguing possibilities. Mass hysteria, hidden instrumentation, a mechanical trick. But the pull was there, that itch only a puzzle could scratch, stronger even than the drug's allure. Pushing through the heavy oak doors of St. Martin in the Fields, he entered the sanctuary's glow. Candlelight danced on polished pews worn smooth by centuries of penitence, the air heavy with incense and wax, undercut by the chill seeping from stone walls etched with frost. The nave thrummed with the choir, ranged in tiers before the altar, faces serene, eyes half-lidded in rapture. Vicar Reginald Blackwood stood at the pulpit, portly frame quivering, flushed cheeks gleaming with sweat under his askew clerical collar. Beside him, Elias Thorne, the choirmaster, gaunt behind wire-rimmed spectacles, thinning grey hair plastered to his scalp, conducted with precise flicks of a trembling baton. Watson spotted him first, rising from a front pew, his sturdy build and walrus moustache unmistakable even in shadow. "John," he rasped, voice low amid the swell of song. "Thank God you've come." "It's unnatural, Holmes. 3 days now, without water, food, rest. The physicians are baffled. Scotland Yard whispers of opium or mesmerism." Holmes waved him silent, shedding his Inverness cape onto a pew. His pulse quickened, not from withdrawal's ache, but from the anomaly. He approached the chancel rail, inhaling the scent of pine from the Christmas tree laden with wax angels. The singers, parishioners all, from Eliza Hawthorne's ethereal soprano at the centre, raven hair framing emerald eyes and pale skin to the weathered basses at the ends, moved as one, chests rising in perfect unison. No sweat on brows, no strain in throats. Their lips formed words flawlessly, joyful, all ye nations rise. "Listen closer," Watson urged, moustache twitching. No breaks. Even when they shift hymns, Silent Night into "O come all ye faithful," seamless. The vicar tried stopping them yesterday. Thorne signalled end, but they continued, eyes glazing as if compelled. Holmes tilted his head, ears attuned to subtleties others missed. The harmonics were pristine, overtones layering like cathedral glass. Yet beneath a faint discord, a whisper almost subliminal threading through the voices. Not human error, but something engineered. He scanned faces. Eliza's beauty held a haunted edge, as if her orphan street-singing past clawed back. Thorne's scowl deepened, fingers white on the baton. Blackwood mopped his brow, hands shaking worse than Holmes's own. "Extraordinary," Holmes murmured, stepping past the rail uninvited. The choir didn't falter as he circled them, magnifying glass from his pocket catching candle flicker. Pupils normal. No dilation of narcotics. Pulses steady at necks. No tachycardia. He paused before Eliza, her voice piercing clearest, emerald eyes meeting his with faint recognition. Miss Hawthorne, renowned soloist risen from Whitechapel rags, ever sung through fever. She didn't answer, lips curving into the hymn's melody, but her gaze flickered. Fear? Defiance? Thorne interjected sharply. Mr. Holmes, this is sacred ground. The miracle of the season, perhaps God's own chorus proclaiming the birth. Miracles are for the credulous, Holmes snapped, voice cutting like a scalpel. Logic demands evidence. When precisely did it commence? Blackwood cleared his throat, voice booming yet unsteady, midnight sharp. As the clock struck, the Gloria swelled. We'd rehearsed all Advent, Thorne's rigorous scores, but this, endurance beyond flesh. Holmes's mind flashed to his own abyss. Baker Street rooms strewn with vials, Moran's shadow from past cases lurking, the cocaine needle his tempter's kiss. Watson had found him slumped there yesterday, post-binge haze lifting only for this summons. You dragged me from the brink, old friend, he thought, but puzzles pull harder. This choir mocked physics. Lungs require air, voices tire. Hidden bellows, ventriculo-acoustic devices. He knelt by a soprano's feet, sniffing for chemicals. Nothing but leather boots and faint lavender. Rising, he addressed Thorne. Your scandal at Oxford, affair with a patron's wife, scholarship lost. Does desperation breed deception? Thorne's spectacles flashed. Ancient history. This is divine intervention saving our crumbling parish from debtors. Watson gripped Holmes's arm. Easy. The fellow traveller in me sees grace here, Sherlock. After Afghanistan's horrors, war's wreckage, I've yearned for such signs. Holmes shrugged him off, the touch igniting craving's spark. Grace is a void filled by reason. He strode to the organ loft, climbing spiral stairs, the song ascending with him. Up close, pipes silent, no bellows pumping. Back down, he noted the church's atmosphere, hopeful murmurs from lingering faithful, bundled in wool against the draught, eyes wide with awe. Community clinging to wonder amid London's grind. Yet doubt gnawed Holmes too. His arc from detached intellect to... What? The drug whispered temptations, Limehouse dens calling, but this enigma anchored him. Vicar, he demanded, any newcomers? Saboteurs? Blackwood paled. None. All known souls. Eliza's voice cracked a fraction on a high note. First floor. Holmes whirled. There, fatigue setting in. But it smoothed instantly, chorus swallowing the slip. Thorne signaled a modulation, and they flowed into It Came Upon the Midnight Clear, fresh as dawn. Watson leaned close. The press circles outside. If unsolved panic. Riots over endless angels or devil's ploy. Holmes paced, synapses firing, seeds planted, Thorne's motive, prestige amid ruin, Blackwood's debts, trembling hands hiding ledgers, Eliza's eyes holding secrets from street shadows. Red herring, superstition, truth rational buried deep. As midnight neared again, the fog pressed windows like spectres. Holmes felt the vice tighten, body craving syringe, mind craving solution. What force bound these 39, hypnosis from the rafters, poison granting stamina at fatal cost? Then, a chill deeper than Thames wind. From the choir's midst, a new harmony emerged, words unspoken yet heard in Holmes's skull alone. Redeem, the fallen. He froze. Hallucination from withdrawal? Or clue? Watson watched him, concern etching weathered lines. Sherlock. But Holmes pressed on, resolve hardening against inner storm. The answer lay here, in St. Martin-in-the-Field's sacred grip, and unraveling it might just unravel him too. This story is created by a young creator whose dream is to reach 1,000 subscribers. If you enjoy these tales, subscribing helps more than you know, and he thanks you for it. Mysteries that challenge your mind and reward attention unfold now, as Holmes delves deeper into the unending song. Outside, a carriage rattled closer through fog, bearing Scotland Yard's inspector. News of the first singer faltering, lips moving silent as death. The carriage door slammed open in the fog-choked night, spilling a tall figure wrapped in a greatcoat onto the slick cobbles of Trafalgar Square. Inspector Lestrade of Scotland Yard strode towards St. Martin-in-the-Fields, his boots echoing like accusations against the church's stone facade. Holmes watched from the shadowed vestibule, the cocaine haze in his veins sharpening every detail, the man's furrowed brow, the flicker of gaslight on his badge, the laboured breath from the chill dash across London. Watson emerged beside him, rubbing gloved hands against the damp. Lestrade, at this hour? Troubling. Inside, the choir's voices swelled, undiminished, a relentless tide of "Hark! The herald angels sing!" notes curling through the nave like incense. 39 figures on the chancel steps, unmoving save for the subtle rise and fall of chests, eyes distant as if beholding some inner dawn. Thorne conducted with mechanical precision from his podium, spectacles glinting, while Vicar Blackwood hovered at the altar, fingers twisting his cassock hem. Lestrade burst through the oak doors, hat clutched in one fist, face ashen under the lantern glow. "Holmes, thank God, it's worse. One of them, young tenor Peter Hale, he's failed. Lips still forming words but no sound. Collapsed in the vestry not 10 minutes past." Holmes' pulse quickened, a thrill cutting through withdrawal's fog. Led on. They hurried to the vestry, a cramped chamber off the south transept reeking of damp wool and candle wax. Peter Hale lay slumped against a scarred oak table, 24 years old, his choir robe twisted about thin limbs, cheeks hollowed, skin clammy as Thames mud, lips parted in silent mimicry of the hymns drifting through the walls. No breath fogged the air before his mouth. His chest heaved shallowly, eyes rolled back to whites. Watson knelt, fingers probing the neck pulse. Alive barely, heart fluttering like a trapped bird. No fever, no wounds. Poison. Lestrade paced the flagstones. Found him mid-carol, they say, dropped like a stone. The others? Not a falter. Press is howling. Miracle or malediction? Moriarty's ghost, some whisper. Holmes leaned close, inhaling the faint scent of cloves on Hale's breath. Lozenges for singers' throats, pupils dilated unnaturally, matching the choir's trance. He pried open the jaw, tongue untouched, no foam. Withdrawal from what stimulant? Or suppression? Thorne appeared in the doorway, scowl deepening shadows on his gaunt face. "Inspector, Mr. Holmes." Peter was fine at vespers, dedicated lad, from the workhouse choir. Holmes straightened, eyes locking on Thorne's trembling hands. Dedicated, yet 38 persist. Your choir, your command. Any shared tonic? Drafts in the robbing room? Thorne bristled, wire-rimmed spectacles slipping. Absurd. Pure voices for the Christ Mass. No draughts but holy water blessed this morn. Vicar Blackwood shuffled in behind, portly frame filling the frame, cheeks flushed brighter than mulled wine. "Gentlemen, please. Peter's family awaits word. The service must go on," Holmes finished softly, mind racing. Indeed. But first, Hale to hospital. Watson. His friend nodded, signalling 2 vergers to lift the boy. Holmes lingered, scanning shelves of hymnals and tarnished chalices, a faint residue on a communion cup, white powder. He pocketed a sample discreetly. Back in the nave, Eliza Hawthorne's soprano pierced the air, crystalline amid the baritones, her raven hair unbound now, framing emerald eyes that flicked toward Holmes for a heartbeat. Curious, unafraid. No fatigue in her poise. If anything, vigor deepened the pallor of her skin. Lestrade tugged Holmes aside near a pillar carved with angels. Scotland Yard stretched thin, riots brewing in Whitechapel over cursed carols. Solve it, or headlines bury us all. Holmes nodded absently, the church's warmth pressing like a vice. His own demons stirred, the 7% solution calling from Baker Street's Morocco case. Hours since last injection. Tremors ghosted his fingers. Focus, rational paths, mass hysteria from Thorne's fervour. Vicar's debts fueling desperation. Parish ledgers he'd glimpsed showed deficits from restorations never done. Eliza's street singer passed, opium dens familiar. Yet the harmony mocked logic, weaving through stained glass glow of Joseph and Mary, untouched by time. Watson returned, wiping brow. Hale stabilized at Charing Cross. Doctors baffled, metabolism in overdrive, as if singing burned him empty. Holmes paced the aisle, fog from cracked windows coiling at ankles. Overdrive. Yes. Hypnosis. Thorne's conducting like Svengali's baton, or acoustic anomaly in these vaults, resonance-sustaining trance. Eliza's note wavered again, barely audible, a hairline fracture in Joy to the World. Holmes froze mid-stride, their humanity-piercing perfection. She met his gaze fully now, lips curving faintly. "Help us," the look implored, or warned. Thorne shot her a glare, modulating sharply. The choir adapted seamlessly, voices blending as one eternal breath. Blackwood approached, voice quavering. "Mr. Holmes, the congregation grows restless outside. Fog hides them, but murmurs rise. A sign from above, perhaps. The endless song, a miracle masking crime," Holmes murmured, "or crime cloaked as miracle." His mind fractured. Cocaine's clarity versus spirit's whisper from earlier, redeem the fallen. Hallucination, surely. Yet Hale's fall echoed his own near misses, nights in Limehouse chasing dragons while Watson pleaded. Lestrade clapped his shoulder. "Midnight service peak soon. Find the break, Holmes." As the inspector departed into swirling mist, Holmes climbed to the organ loft for vantage. Perched above, he surveyed. Thorne's subtle signals, Blackwood's averted eyes, Eliza's solitary grace amid brothers frozen in song. 38 now, the void where Hale stood a black tear in formation. The organist, oblivious sexton, pumped pedals for swell. Holmes noted pipes corroded, dust thick, unlikely sabotage. But beneath a faint hum, not mechanical. Descent brought him face to face with Eliza at intermission's edge. No intermission truly, but a momentary hush as Thorne conferred. She sipped water, hand steady. "Miss Hawthorne," he said low, "your voice falters." "Why?" Her emerald eyes held his, raw, with unspoken weight. "Not falters, Mr. Holmes. Fights. We've sung since dusk. Will till dawn, as vowed." "Peter." He lacked faith. Vowed? To whom? She glanced to the crucifix above altar, gold leaf catching candle flame. To him, and to Elias, the choir's covenant. Thorne called resumption. She glided back, resuming flawlessly. Holmes's temples throbbed. Covenant. Cultish veil over scheme. Financial salvation via spectacle. Donations pouring for miracle mass. Watson joined him near font, waters still as glass. "Holmes, your colours poor." Baker Street. Later. Truth first. Yet as silent night enveloped the church, Holmes felt the pull, not just puzzle but personal precipice. The song's peace mocked his chaos, redemption's echo taunted his logic. One faltering singer down. How many more before the chorus cracked? Outside, press lanterns bobbed closer, shouts piercing fog. Inside, a verger whispered to Blackwood, another tenor sways oddly. Holmes tensed. The vice tightened further. What poison or pact bound them, and could he sever it without shattering himself? Deep in the choir's core, Eliza's gaze found him again, this time laced with desperation, as if she alone heard the unraveling thread. Holmes held Eliza's gaze across the nave, the choir's harmonies swelling like a tide that refused retreat. Her emerald eyes pleaded silently amid the relentless, "O come all ye faithful," a melody that now carried an undercurrent of strain, voices blending yet fraying at the edges. He broke away first, pulse quickening not from the cocaine's ghost in his veins, but from the enigma's grip. 38 singers, unyielding since Vespers, their breaths synchronized in unnatural endurance. Peter Hale's absence loomed larger, his spot a spectral gap where candlelight flickered uneasily. Watson sidled closer, his moustache twitching with concern. Holmes, the verger's whisper, another tenor, Josiah Wren. "He's listing like a ship in gale. Shall I fetch Lestrade back?" "No," Holmes murmured, eyes scanning the ranks. "Observe first. Patterns emerge in chaos." He slipped toward the choir stalls, weaving past parishioners huddled in pews, their faces etched with awe and fatigue. The church air hung heavy with beeswax and incense, undercut by the metallic tang of exertion sweat from the singers. Thorne conducted with metronomic precision, baton slicing air, his wire-rimmed spectacles glinting under gaslight. Blackwood paced the chancel, rosary beads clicking softly, his portly frame casting erratic shadows. Josiah Wren, a wiry man of perhaps 40, stood third from Eliza, his face ashen, lips moving mechanically. Holmes positioned himself inches away, inhaling the faint sourness of bile on the man's breath. Dehydration, exhaustion, yet no collapse. Wren's eyes, dull as spent coals, fixed on Thorne, unblinking. "Mr. Wren," Holmes said softly during a harmonic pause that wasn't truly a pause, only a swell's breath. "How do you sustain? No water, no rest?" Wren's voice rasped through the song, words woven into melody. "Vow holds us. Faith's fire burns steady." Holmes pressed. "Vow to what end?" Hale broke it. "Where is he now?" A tremor rippled Wren's frame, but his tenor held. Hale doubted. "Paid. Sing on. Till light." Thorne's baton dipped sharply. Wren straightened, notes pure again. Holmes retreated, mind racing. Cult compulsion, hypnosis via rhythm, or subtler chemistry, belladonna in the communion wine, dilating pupils for trance. His hand trembled toward his inner pocket, where vials waited like sirens. Just a prick to sharpen the fog. No, he clenched fist, nails biting palm. Baker Street echoed in memory. Empty rooms, Moran's shadow long faded, Watson's pleas unanswered. The Afghan bullet had scarred Watson's shoulder, Holmes's own wounds festered unseen, logic's armor cracking under solitude's weight. Flashback clawed. 7 months prior, the Reichenbach farce staged for Moriarty's web. Holmes had injected triumph, cocaine flooding veins as he plummeted, feigned death to protect allies. Emerging months later, gaunt and feral, he'd found Watson remarried, then widowed anew, loyalty frayed but unbroken. Yet Holmes spiraled, cases devolving to haze-chased riddles, violin strings snapped in rage. Rock bottom. A 7 dials den needle-deep hallucinating Irene's ghost, mocking his frailty. Watson had dragged him out, rain-lashed streets blurring. "Enough, Holmes. You're not invincible." Invincible? Holmes had laughed then, bitter, merely indispensable. Now, in St. Martin's hush between carols, Watson gripped his arm. "Your hands shake, the syringe." Silence. Holmes pulled free, shame burning. "This case. It mirrors me, bound to a lie unraveling thread by thread." Watson's eyes softened, war veteran's steel yielding to friend's plea. "Then let me stand with you, as always." They moved to the vestry door, where Blackwood slipped inside for a hurried conference with Thorne. Holmes eased it ajar, eavesdropping amid the choir's distant "Hark the Herald Angels Sing." "Cha." "Wren's faltering, Elias," Blackwood hissed, voice quivering. "Debts mount, parishioners murmur of hoax if one more drops. Hale's body." "Hidden safe," Thorne snapped, gaunt face twisting. "The vow demands purity. Eliza holds strongest. She'll anchor them." "Body?" Holmes tensed, exchanging glance with Watson. Blackwood's plea cracked. "My embezzlements funded your spectacles. The orphanages suffer if exposed. This miracle mass must endure till offertory swells." Thorne's laugh dry as dust. "Your ledger's falsified since '89, Vicar. Our pact seals it, endless song for salvation." Holmes burst in, door slamming wide. "Gentlemen, your conspiracy unravels faster than Wren's pitch." Blackwood gasped, clutching cassock, cheeks flushing crimson. "Mr. Holmes, this is private." "Embezzlement," Thorne interjected coolly. "Spectacles impassive. Speculation detective. The choir vows silence till Christmas morn. Divine inspiration, nothing more." Watson barred the door. "Hale's corpse. Where?" Thorne's scowl deepened. No corpse. Hale fled cowardice, doubting the spirit's endurance. "Lies," Blackwood whimpered suddenly, hands wringing. "Peter confronted us, saw the ledgers, threatened Scotland Yard. Thorne subdued him. Crypt below with the old bones." Thorne whirled, fist raised, but Holmes stepped between, calm as frost. "Violence solves nothing, Maestro. Lead us." Reluctantly, Thorne descended stone stairs behind the altar, lanterns sputtering. The crypt reeked of damp earth and decay, vaults honeycombed with forgotten worthies. In a shadowed recess, slumped against masonry, Peter Hale, tenor, mid-30s, bruised throat livid, eyes staring vacant. Poison or strangulation? Holmes knelt, probing pulse long gone. Rigor partial, dead hours. Watson lit match, illuminating scrawled note clutched in Hale's stiff fingers. The vow damns us all. End it. Thorne knelt too, feigning grief. Overzealous rehearsal, Hale collapsed. We hid to preserve the miracle. Holmes rose, fury veiled. Preserve your fraud. Blackwood's thefts, your manipulations, choir drugged or coerced into endless song, donations flooding for the supernatural vigil. No drugs, Thorne insisted. Willpower alone, forged in covenant. Upstairs the choir pressed on, Eliza's soprano soaring defiantly. But Wren now swayed perilously, a sob escaping mid-note. Holmes faced them. Confess fully, or Lestrade arrives with constables. Hale's murder unmasks all. Blackwood crumpled to knees, sobbing. Forgive me, Lord, the debts from father's ruin. Thorne promised spectacle would save us. Thorne straightened, defiant. Test us, Holmes. The song continues unbroken. As they ascended, Wren collapsed fully, thud echoing through nave. Parishioners gasped. Eliza's voice cracked first time, a raw plea amid harmony. Holmes' mind whirled. Not drugs, but packed psychological vice. Fear, loyalty, faith twisted. His own addictions mirrored it. Cocaine's vow, logic's unyielding song, drowning heart. Watson steadied him. Holmes, you're pale as Hale. This darkness, it's consuming you. Perhaps, Holmes whispered, clarity dawning amid despair. Change beckons, old friend. But first, sever this chorus's curse before it claims another or me. Outside, fog thickened, press cries nearer. Inside, Eliza approached, tears tracing pale cheeks. Help us, Mr. Holmes. The vow. It's killing us slowly. Her confession hung, hook of deeper secrets. What unholy origin bound them since that Oxford scandal of Thorne's past? Comment if you've known someone who found their way back. Eliza's emerald eyes locked onto Holmes's, her voice a fragile thread amid the choir's relentless hum, now fractured by Wren's collapse. The nave of St. Martin in the Fields pulsed with that unending melody, voices weaving tighter even as one had fallen silent forever. Fog seeped through cracked windows, carrying the metallic tang of the Thames and the distant clamour of Trafalgar Square's revellers oblivious to the shadows within. Holmes felt the weight of her plea like a syringe-piercing vein, stirring his own hidden cravings. Help us, she'd whispered. But how? Logic demanded dissection. His blood sang for 7% solution to sharpen the fog in his mind. He turned from her, striding toward Thorne, who hovered over Wren's limp form, parishioners murmuring prayers laced with fear. Elias Thorne, choirmaster, straightened his wire-rimmed spectacles, his gaunt face a mask of calculated sorrow. The song must not break, he murmured, voice clipped with Oxford polish eroded by years of desperation. Hale's passing was tragedy, yes, but the vigil, our covenant, demands endurance. Covenant, Holmes echoed, the word bitter on his tongue. Your Oxford scandal birthed this, didn't it? Whispers of a ruined soprano, a fellowship shattered, debts that drove you to this church's brink. Speak plainly, Thorne, or I'll unravel it thread by thread before Lestrade drags you into Newgate. Thorne's thinning grey hair caught the gaslight flicker, shadows carving deeper lines into his scowl. You pry like a surgeon on a corpse, Mr. Holmes. That affair, 20 years past, a momentary lapse with a pupil's mother. Scholarship lost, reputation dust. I came here to rebuild, to forge something pure through music. St. Martin's was crumbling under Blackwood's inheritance of ruin. The endless carol. Born of necessity, yes, but miracle too. Watson knelt beside Wren, sturdy hands checking breath, shallow, erratic, pulse racing like a trapped bird. Not poison like Hale, but exhaustion's grip. Holmes, we must end this now. Call the physicians. No, Thorne snapped, his perpetual scowl twisting into fervour. They vowed, all 39. bound in sacred pact on that first fog-choked eve. Sing until dawn breaks on Christmas unbroken, and Providence would fill the collection plates. Debts paid, legacy saved. Willpower alone, no potions, no chains. Faith in the harmony. Holmes paced the cold stone aisle, boots echoing softly against the choir's drone. Faith, he scoffed inwardly, the opium of the masses masking desperation. Yet his fingers twitched toward the pocket vial, cocaine's promise whispering sweeter than any carol. He saw himself in their vice, logic's unyielding covenant, injecting numbness to silence the heart's discord. Vicar Blackwood shuffled forward, portly frame trembling, clerical collar damp with sweat despite the church's chill. His flushed cheeks paled as he clutched a pew. Elias speaks partial truth. I skimmed the funds, yes. Father's gambling left us hollow. But the choir, they chose it. Eliza most fervent. Eliza rose from Wren's side, raven hair disheveled, pale skin luminous in candlelight. Chose? Her soprano cut through, raw now, no longer ethereal. We were starving artists, street singers in Whitechapel fog. Thorne found us, promised transcendence. The vow was ecstasy at first, song lifting us above hunger cold. But now, it devours. Holmes seized the moment, voice commanding the nave's hush. Enough. Disperse the choir. Sing your fill in solitude. The pact breaks tonight. Thorne laughed, a hollow bark. Test us, detective. Command them silent. Holmes faced the risers, 38 faces swaying, eyes glassy, lips moving in perpetual motion. Cease, he ordered sharply. The vigil ends. Hale's blood stains your harmony. Silence fell like a guillotine, but only for a heartbeat. Then defiantly, Eliza's voice pierced first, others joining in tidal swell. The melody swelled, fiercer, as if Hale's death fueled it. Wren stirred, lips parting to whisper the notes before slumping again. Impossible, Watson breathed, mustache quivering. Hypnosis. Mass delusion. Deeper, Holmes murmured, mind racing through clues. The scrawled note, the vow damns us all. Thorne's scandal not mere affair, rumours of occult rituals in Oxford cellars, music as incantation, psychological binding, loyalty forged in shared shame. He cornered Thorne in the vestry, away from prying ears, the air thick with incense and mildew. Your past hides more than dalliance. That soprano's mother, suicide after your rejection, and the choir's origins. Did you weave pagan rites into Christian hymn? Thorne sagged against oak panels, spectacles fogging. A desperate experiment. Oxford fellows mocked my compositions. I sought ancient modes, modal scales from desert monks to induce trance. The scandal veiled it. Here, amplified by Blackwood's desperation, it became eternal. They sing because stopping means facing the void we filled with music. Holmes's hand brushed his vial, temptation surging. His own void, war's echoes in Watson's eyes, Moriarty's shadow, cocaine's cold clarity. You're addicts to this song, as I to my needle. But redemption demands rupture. Watson burst in, face grim. Lestrade's men at the doors, press swarming. Wren's seized again. Eliza tends her, but the others won't stop. Outside, fog choked Trafalgar Square, gas lamps haloed in mist, newsboys hawking headlines of the spectral choir. Holmes emerged into the vestibule, where Blackwood knelt in prayer, rosary beads clicking like bones. Vicar, your confession, full now. Embezzlement, coercion. The miracle's fraud unravels your soul first. Blackwood wept, hands clasping Holmes's coat. Mercy, sir. The pact saved us from debtor's prison, God forgive. God, Holmes thought, a spark igniting within. Or devil's bargain. His arc bent, detached intellect yielding to moral fire. Watson's steady gaze anchored him, fellow traveller in this fog. Eliza approached, voice hoarse from endless notes. Mr. Holmes, the vow's origin. Thorne's Oxford tome, borrowed from forbidden stacks. Chants that bind spirit to sound. To break it, one must face the first sin. The scandal's true victim still lives. Her words landed like revelation, but pain twisted her features. A cramp seized her throat mid-sentence, forcing a gasp. The song pulled her back. She hummed involuntarily, eyes widening in terror. Holmes steadied her, pulse racing under his fingers, mirroring his own. The church bells tolled midnight, Christmas Eve deepening into peril. Thorne watched from shadows, defiant spark in his eyes. Watson gripped Holmes's shoulder. "You're unraveling too, old chap. That pallor. Have you dosed again?" "Not yet," Holmes lied, vial burning pocket hot. "But the night's far from over. If Eliza's hint points true, the scandal's ghost haunts these walls. We chase it to the crypts below, before the choir claims her next." As they descended creaking stairs into St. Martin's undercroft, damp air heavy with earth and forgotten grief, a faint echo rose, not carol, but a woman's scream from decades past. Thorne's secret victim, or Holmes' own breaking point looming? The undercroft's torchlight danced on crypt slabs, revealing dust-choked ledgers. Holmes rifled them, fingers trembling not from cold. Entries blurred: Thorne's arrival, Blackwood's loans, Eliza's recruitment from fog-bound alleys. Then a sealed envelope, wax stamped with Oxford crest. He broke it, Watson's lantern casting long shadows. Inside, a yellowed photograph. Young Thorne, arm around a woman, raven-haired like Eliza, but older, eyes haunted. Suicide note transcribed: "The song never ends, it damns the soul." Eliza, trailing them, paled. "My mother." Thorne promised her fame. She birthed the trance in his arms, died resisting its pull. Thorne appeared at the archway, voice echoing. She lacked faith. "You, Eliza, carry her gift. Sing on." Rage flared in Holmes, not logic's blade, but human fury. He lunged, pinning Thorne to stone. "Confess the right's core, or I expose you as murderer by proxy." Thorne wheezed, scowl cracking. "No murder. The vow's grace, endurance redeems. Like your cocaine, Holmes. Admit it mirrors us." The admission stung, Holmes releasing him, retreating into shadows. Watson's concern deepened. Eliza hummed faintly, fighting the pull. Upstairs, Wren's cries pierced. Another collapse. The choir swelled triumphant, donations clinking into plates from awed crowds. Holmes pocketed the photo, resolve hardening amid inner storm. "This struggle mirrors my own fall. Addictions packed. To save them, confront mine first." But as fog pressed thicker, Lestrade's whistle shrilled nearer, promising handcuffs for all. What lurked in Thorne's tome, hidden deeper in the crypts? And could Holmes sever his craving before the song silenced him forever? Lestrade's whistle sliced through the fog like a scalpel, sharp and insistent, pulling Holmes from the crypt's suffocating grip. He straightened, the yellowed photograph burning in his pocket like a fresh syringe mark. Thorne slunk back into the shadows, his scowl reforming into that inscrutable mask, while Eliza pressed a hand to her throat, as if the hum within her threatened to escape. Watson glanced upward, his mustache twitching with unease. "We must move," Holmes murmured, voice low and edged with the gravel of suppressed need. "The inspector will not distinguish between savior and suspect down here." They ascended the worn stone steps, the air growing thicker with incense and wax from the nave above. Wren's cries had faded into the choir's relentless swell, a harmony that no longer mimicked carols, but burrowed into the mind like roots seeking water. Donations poured in from the pews, coins rattling into Vicar Blackwood's trembling plates. The congregation entranced, faces upturned in unwitting rapture. Lestrade burst through the vestry door as they emerged, his bull-like frame silhouetted against gaslight, 2 constables at his heels. "Holmes! There you are, you sly fox. Reports of collapses, whispers of hauntings. And now Scotland Yard finds you skulking in crypts with the very suspects." Holmes met his gaze steadily, though his fingers itched for the 7% solution tucked in his waistcoat. "Merely unraveling threads, Inspector. The choir's anomaly is no haunting, but a calculated affliction." "Affliction?" Lestrade snorted, eyes narrowing on Eliza, who shrank back, her emerald eyes wide. "This lot's been singing non-stop for hours. Vicar's calling it a miracle. Half the square's convinced it's divine. But I've got witnesses saying you dosed them with something, Holmes. Your reputation precedes you." "Cocaine visions," they whisper. Watson stepped forward, his military bearing unyielding. "Baseless slander, Lestrade. Mr. Holmes is aiding the church, not sabotaging it." Thorne materialized from a side aisle, spectacles glinting. "Inspector, these men are guests. The choir endures through faith alone. See for yourself." He gestured to the chancel, where the 39 singers swayed, mouths open in perpetual motion, eyes glassy under the arched vault. No breath faltered, no voice cracked. The sound wrapped around them, a velvet noose pulling at Holmes's resolve. He felt it then. The echo of his own cravings, that insatiable pull mirroring the song's hold. Lestrade grumbled but waved his men to stand down. "Fine, but one more feint and it's lock up for the lot. Dismiss the crowd, Vicar. This miracle reeks." Blackwood nodded jerkily, his portly cheeks paling as he climbed the pulpit. "Beloved, the Lord has blessed us tonight, but service concludes. Go in peace." Murmurs rippled through the pews, reluctant. As families shuffled out into the drizzle-slick night, Holmes watched them go, noting the dazed expressions, the way some hummed under their breath, even on the stoop. The true danger lingered not in collapse, but contagion. As the church emptied, Holmes turned to Thorne. "The tome. You spoke of vows and grace. Show me, or Lestrade's men will tear these stones apart." Thorne hesitated, glancing at Eliza, then led them to a concealed panel behind the altar. It groaned open on rusted hinges, revealing a narrow alcove stacked with mouldering volumes. He withdrew a leather-bound book, its cover embossed with a faded choir loft emblem, pages brittle as autumn leaves. "This is no grimoire of devils, Holmes, composed by my predecessor in 1842 during a cholera plague. The Endurance Canticle, a melody forged in prayer to sustain the faithful through trial." Holmes snatched it, lantern light flickering over illuminated script, Latin phrases intertwined with musical staves, notes spiraling like ascending souls. He traced the vows inscribed at the fore, "Ego vovio perpetuum carmen pro redemptione animae meae." "I vow the eternal song for the redemption of my soul." Watson peered over his shoulder. "A trance induced by repetition? Like mesmerism but rooted in belief?" Eliza whispered, touching the page. "Mother sang it first. Thorne found me in the alleys, said I had her voice, her curse. It quiets the hunger inside, fills the void, but it never releases." Thorne's voice softened, almost paternal. "She broke the vow, sought escape in opium dens. Collapsed like Wren tonight. The song demands total surrender, Holmes, much like your needle. It redeems by endurance, grace through unrelenting trial." The words landed like a syringe withdrawn too soon. Empty, aching. Holmes's hand trembled as he closed the book. His own void yawned wider. Baker Street's loneliness, Moriarty's shadow, the cocaine's false clarity. This rite weaponized faith into addiction, promising salvation through chains. Thorne had twisted it, perhaps to bury his scandals, buoy the church's coffers with mesmerized crowds. "You peddle damnation as divinity," Holmes said flatly. "Blackwood knows the debts, the loans. This sustains your facade." The vicar, lingering nearby, flushed crimson. "Lies. It's God's work reviving us." Lestrade, eavesdropping from the aisle, barked a laugh. "More riddles? I've had enough. Holmes, you're coming with me for questioning, unless you prove this canticle harmless." Before Holmes could retort, Eliza gasped, clutching her throat. The hum surged within her, unbidden, her lips parting. Notes poured out, pure and piercing, drawing Wren from the shadows. The girl stumbling forward, eyes vacant. Joining in duet, Watson seized Eliza's shoulders. "Fight it, lass." But the song swelled, pulling others, stray choristers rising from pews, voices blending into the full canticle. Thorne smiled faintly. "See, it calls its own." Holmes's mind raced, logic fracturing under the melody's assault. His pocket vial called back, a siren's whisper. One prick, and clarity, or oblivion. He backed away, pulse thundering as Lestrade's constables advanced on the singers. "No," he rasped to himself, "not like this." He lunged for Thorne again, wresting a small crystal phial from the choirmaster's robes. Shimmering liquid, the rite's elixir. Thorne shoved him off. Antidote or accelerant? Only the vowed know. The church doors rattled, fog poured in like breath. Eliza's voice cracked. Collapsing into Watson's arms, Wren followed, foaming faintly. Lestrade bellowed orders. "Restrain them. Holmes, this is on you." As cuffs clicked toward him, Holmes pocketed the file, resolve igniting amid the chaos. The tome's final page burned in memory. A warning of the singer who breaks free, damning all. Thorne's mother in song, or his own precipice. But deeper in the alcove's gloom, a shadow stirred. Not man, but ledger unturned, revealing Blackwood's forged signatures. The vicar's secret embezzlement funded Thorne's arrival, binding them in sin. Holmes dodged a constable's grasp, whispering to Watson, "Baker Street. Analyze the file. I'll delay them." Watson nodded, hauling Eliza toward the side exit. Holmes faced Lestrade, mind a whirlwind of deduction and desperation. "Inspector, arrest me if you must, but the true criminal hides the song's origin, and it sings for blood next." Lestrade hesitated, whistle poised. The choir's remnants hummed on, faint but insistent, threading through the rafters. Holmes felt his craving crest, a wave threatening to drown reason. Could he dose the church without dosing himself? Outside, carriage wheels splashed through puddles, but inside, the fog coalesced unnaturally, carrying a chill whisper, "Perpetuum Carmen." As Lestrade clapped irons on his wrists, Holmes glimpsed Thorne slipping away, tome underarm. The real hunt began now, not for choir ghosts, but the demon in his veins, echoing the crypt's curse. What poison hid in the file, salvation or snare? And as dawn crept grey over Trafalgar Square, would Holmes yield to the song before it silenced London forever? The iron cuffs bit into Holmes's wrists as Lestrade's men dragged him through the fog-choked streets of Trafalgar Square, the chill December air slicing like a scalpel through his greatcoat. Gas lamps flickered yellow halos against the perpetual drizzle, casting long shadows that twisted like the singer's unending melody, still echoing in his skull. Perpetuum Carmen, the Latin curse from the tome, eternal song. It burrowed deeper now, not just in memory, but in his veins, mingling with the familiar itch of withdrawal, his cocaine syringe left behind at the church. Rock bottom had found him, not in some opium den, but here, shackled and exposed, reason fracturing under superstition's weight. They shoved him into the dimly lit holding cell at Scotland Yard, the door clanging shut with finality. Stone walls wept moisture, the air thick with the stench of unwashed prisoners and stale tobacco. Holmes slumped onto the narrow bench, his gaunt frame shivering despite the layers. His piercing grey eyes darted to the small bulge in his pocket, the crystal phial cool against his thigh. Thorne's elixir. Antidote? Or the very accelerant that bound the choir to their spectral vigil? He pressed his forehead to the bars, inhaling the metallic tang of the fog rolling in from the Thames. Watson had the girl, Eliza, and the promise of Baker Street analysis. But Holmes was alone with his demons now, the detective who chased shadows now chased by one within. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, deliberate and heavy. Lestrade appeared, his bulldog face ruddy under the lantern light, pipe clenched between teeth. He unlocked the cell and stepped in, eyes narrowing. Sherlock Holmes arrested for obstruction and suspected conspiracy in the Saint. Martin in the Fields horror. 39 singers vanished into thin air on Christmas Eve, and you turn it into a circus. Explain yourself before I throw away the key. Holmes lifted his head slowly, aquiline nose casting a sharp shadow. His voice emerged raspy, laced with the tremor of need. "Inspector, the circus was Thorne's. The choirmaster orchestrated more than hymns. That phial I took, it's the key. Liquid opiate, perhaps, laced with something alchemical to induce the trance. The singers didn't vanish. They're trapped in perpetual motion, voices echoing from the crypt below the church." Lestrade snorted, puffing smoke that curled like the fog outside. "Crypts and alchemy? You're raving, Holmes. Witnesses saw them dissolve into mist. And the vicar, Blackwood, swears it was mass hysteria from bad gas. But you lunged at Thorne like a madman. Madness is the tempter's tool," Holmes murmured, eyes distant. Thorne's background. Oxford dropout after scandal, a liaison with a patron's wife. He arrived at St. Martin 5 years ago, coinciding with the parish's financial woes. Blackwood's debts, forged ledgers I glimpsed in the alcove. Embezzlement funded Thorne's experiments, binding them in secrecy. The song isn't supernatural, it's chemistry and coercion. Lestrade leaned closer, breath sour with ale. And your proof? Eliza Hawthorne collapsed foaming, poisoned by you. Holmes's hand twitched toward the file, craving its promise. Eliza's the survivor, the soprano with emerald eyes and raven hair, orphaned street singer turned reluctant pawn. She saw Thorne administer the draft during rehearsals, but admitting it implicates her too. Release me, and I'll prove it. The inspector paced, boots scraping stone. Dawn's breaking, Holmes. Court's in hours. Pray your doctor's influence sways the commissioner. As Lestrade departed, locking the door, Holmes withdrew the file, holding it to the lantern's glow. Shimmering azure liquid swirled, hypnotic. His pulse raced, the cocaine void screaming for any substitute. One drop on the tongue, clarity or curse. He uncorked it, inhaling the faint, herbal scent. Laudanum base, yes, but undercut with something floral, unnatural. Belladonna? Henbane? The choir's elixir, binding flesh to endless song. He stoppered it, slamming it back into his pocket. Not yet. Faith in deduction, not desperation, but the melody swelled in his mind. Perpetuum, Carmen. Haunting, insistent, pulling at the frayed edges of his logic. For the first time, Holmes wondered if reason alone could silence it. Baker Street, Mrs. Hudson's hearth, Watson's steady hand, sanctuary amid the storm. Miles away, in the gaslit warmth of 221B Baker Street, Watson eased Eliza onto the worn leather sofa, her pale skin ghostly under the firelight. The room smelled of pipe tobacco and strong tea, a bulwark against the night's chill. Her emerald eyes fluttered open, raven hair matted with sweat, chest heaving. Doctor. The song. It's still there, she whispered, clutching his sleeve. Thorne made us drink it, promised transcendence, voices eternal for Christmas Mass, but it burned, trapped us. Watson poured brandy into a glass, his walrus moustache twitching with concern. Steady now, Miss Hawthorne. You're safe. Holmes risked everything for this. He uncorked the file Holmes had thrust into his hand amid the chaos, peering at the liquid through his lens. Not poison, euphoric. Yes, but with alkaloids mimicking the opium dream, yet the residue on the cork glowed faintly under magnification. Phosphorescent? Thorne's rite wasn't mere drug. It mimicked the crypt's ancient rite, binding wills through suggestion and chemistry. A knock rattled the door. Mrs. Hudson peered in, her sturdy frame silhouetted. Doctor. A parcel for Mr. Holmes. Delivered by a ragged boy, said it was urgent from the church. Watson snatched the wrapped bundle, tearing it open. A single sheet of vellum, Thorne's scrawled hand. The file is mercy, Holmes. Dose the choir's remnants, or the song claims London. Meet at the old haunts by the docks. Midnight tomorrow, come alone or Eliza sings forever. The tempter's lure. Watson's weathered face hardened, Thorne pulling him back to the edge, just as Holmes teetered on his own abyss. Back in the cell, Holmes paced the narrow confines, mind racing through clues. Eliza's breakdown, not foam, but the elixir's purge. Wren, the boy soprano, same symptoms. Blackwood's trembling hands, not age, but guilt. The vicar's flushed cheeks hid more than port. He'd forged signatures to fund Thorne's arrival, salvaging the parish's prestige amid bankruptcy. But why the perpetual song? A cover for disappearance. Debts erased with singers ascended. Dawn light filtered grey through the barred window, illuminating dust motes dancing like spectral voices. Holmes sank to his knees, an uncharacteristic pose, elbows on thighs. The craving peaked, a vice around his chest, sweat beading despite the cold. Logic failed here. The song demanded surrender. In the silence, a fragment surfaced, not deduction but memory. St. Martin in the Fields, that scarred oak pew where he'd once sat, post-Moriarty, Watson urging faith over void. Grace, he'd scoffed then, effort alone. Now the church's sanctuary called, not as puzzle, but refuge, redemption's whisper amid the struggle. But Thorne's shadow loomed, the dock's temptation pulling like old chains. Lestrade returned at noon, keys jangling. Commissioners swayed, barely. You're out on Watson's recognizance. But Holmes, if this unravels— It won't, Holmes said, rising tall despite the tremor. The true criminal sings tonight. Freed, he stepped into the bustling street, fog lifting slightly to reveal Trafalgar's lions guarding Nelson's column. A hansom cab waited. Watson inside with Eliza, her gaze meeting his. Fear mingled with fragile hope. Baker Street first, Holmes directed the driver. Then the docks. Thorne wants a duel. Watson gripped his arm. You're shaking. The file. Temptation's face, Holmes admitted, voice raw. But community anchors us. You, Eliza. Even Blackwood's broken parish. No one beyond the song's grasp. Not yet. As the cab rattled over cobblestones, splashing through puddles, the melody hummed faintly from Eliza's lips, unbidden. Holmes felt it too, a setback's grip tightening. Midnight loomed, Thorne's old haunts by the Thames, rat-infested warehouses where sailors drowned debts in gin. There the struggle peaked, dose the file and break the curse, or yield to its song, silencing his soul forever. In the alcove of his mind, a new seed sprouted. Blackwood's confessional tremor hinting at deeper sin, a ledger page torn, waiting discovery. Would Holmes confront the vicar before Thorne claimed him? If this story has gripped you, hit the like button. It helps reach more people who would love this. The hansom cab lurched over the slick cobblestones of Baker Street, the horse's hooves clattering like frantic heartbeats in the thinning fog. Holmes leaned back against the worn leather seat, his fingers drumming an erratic rhythm on his knee, each tap echoing the pulse of the melody that refused to fade. Eliza sat opposite, her emerald eyes fixed on the passing gas lamps, their yellow glow flickering across her pale face like hesitant candlelight. Watson, ever the anchor, pressed a steady hand to Holmes's shoulder, his grip firm yet gentle, a silent reminder of battles shared beyond the mind's battlefield. "You need rest, old chap," Watson murmured, his voice low and gravelly from years of shouting orders over Afghan gunfire. "The docks can wait till you've steadied." Holmes shook his head, the deerstalker casting shadows over his gaunt cheeks. "Rest is for the solved cases, John. Thorne's pulling strings from the Thames underbelly, gin dens and opium shadows where truths drown. If Blackwood's ledger hides more than debts, it points there." Eliza shifted, her raven hair catching the light as she whispered, "The song. It's louder near the water, like it knows my voice called it forth that first rehearsal." Her words hung in the damp air, stirring the fragment in Holmes's mind. That scarred oak pew in St. Martin-in-the-Fields, Christmas 1881, post-Reichenbach. Moriarty's shadow had nearly claimed him then, logic crumbling to void. Watson had dragged him to evensong, the choir's harmony a baffling force against despair. Grace unearned, he'd dismissed it. Now as the cab pulled up to 221B, the door swinging open under Mrs. Hudson's worried gaze, that memory clawed back, demanding reckoning. Inside, the familiar clutter greeted him. Chemical apparatus glinting on the sideboard, violin untouched in its case, the Persian slipper overflowing with shag tobacco. But his eyes locked on the mahogany case by the mantel, the 7% solution, its syringe gleaming like a siren's fang. The craving surged, hot and insistent, tasting of bitter smoke and false clarity. His hand trembled as he reached, palm hovering inches away. "No," Holmes breathed, clenching his fist until nails bit skin. Not surrender. Not to Thorne's echo. Watson busied himself stoking the fire, the crackle of kindling filling the room with fleeting warmth. Eliza poured tea from the silver pot, steam rising like Thames mist, her movements precise despite the fear-etching lines around her mouth. "He sees it in you, Holmes, the hunger, like he saw in me before the choir lifted me from the streets." Holmes paced, the floorboards creaking under his lean frame. Thorne's scandal at Oxford, affair with a patron's wife, voice silenced by shame. Now choirmaster, clinging to St. Martin's prestige amid Blackwood's debts. But the singers, 39 voices trapped in endless hymn, witnessed by Lestrade's constables on Christmas Eve. Impossible unless... A knock shattered the thought. Lestrade, breathless, coat dripping. Holmes, bad news. Blackwood's bolted. Vicarage empty, confessional ledger gone. Points to the docks. Thorne's old warehouse, the siren's call. The name twisted like a knife. Holmes snatched his greatcoat, the wool heavy with fog's chill. Then we end this tonight. The cab raced eastward, through Whitechapel's squalor into the docks labyrinth, where the Thames breathed rotten fish and tar, its black waters lapping warehouse pilings like hungry tongues. Gas flares sputtered along the wharves, illuminating coiled ropes and stacked crates, stamped with distant ports. The air thickened with brine and unwashed desperation, cries of dockworkers mingling with gulls' harsh calls. They disembarked at the siren's call, a hulking brick edifice, windows boarded, sign creaking in the wind. Eliza clutched Watson's arm, her breath shallow. That's where Thorne found me singing for coppers. His voice. It promised more. Holmes led, revolver heavy in his pocket, senses razor-sharp despite the vice around his chest. The door yielded to a shove, hinges screaming. Inside, lantern light danced over barrels of smuggled rum, shadows twisting like spectral choristers. Footsteps echoed from the gloom. A figure emerged, gaunt with wire-rimmed spectacles glinting. Elias Thorne himself, a half-empty gin bottle dangling from his fingers. Ah, the great detective. Fallen to street level, Thorne sneered, his Oxford drawl slurred yet cutting. Come for the choir's secret, or your own abyss? Holmes stepped forward, angular face set in defiance. The 39, drugged? Hypnotized? Your doing, to cover Blackwood's thefts. Thorne laughed, a hollow rasp echoing off damp walls. Blackwood's a pawn, drowning in Papa's debts. I gave the parish glory. My choir. Flawless, but that night Eliza's solo cracked the veil, the hymn. It wouldn't cease. Eternal like your cravings, Holmes. I see the shake in your hand. He tossed a small vial onto a crate, cocaine crystals sparkling, purity unmatched. One dose, and the song quiets. Logic returns. Join the damned, or fight the divine jest. The temptation crashed like Thames waves, Holmes's vision narrowing to that vial, pulse thundering. Memories flooded. Baker Street nights lost to haze, cases solved in euphoria's grip, Watson's pleas ignored. His fingers twitched, inching forward, the melody swelling in his ears. Haunting, relentless. Watson lunged, knocking the vial away, glass shattering into glittering shards. Enough, Thorne. God's not mocked. Thorne whirled, spectacles flashing fury. God? This fog-choked hell mocks us all. I silenced the choir's echo with gin and lies. Blackwood paid with stolen arms. But you, Holmes, you're like me, reason's slave till it fails. Eliza's voice pierced the fray, soft yet piercing the song's hold. Elias. You taught me harmony heals. Let it now. Holmes straightened, sweat tracing his aquiline nose, the crave receding to dull ache. Not reason alone, he admitted, voice raw. Community, John's loyalty, your voice, even Blackwood's broken pews. The choir sings redemption's strain, unearned grace amid wreckage. Thorne recoiled, bottle slipping, gin pooling like tears. Then arrest me. But the ledger's ash now. Blackwood fled to confession elsewhere. A crash from the shadows. Figures bursting in. Lestrade's men. Thorne subdued, cuffs clicking like final notes. Outside, fog rolled thicker, midnight bells tolling from distant spires. Holmes leaned on Watson, legs unsteady. The struggle peaks, John. Blackwood's trail leads back to St. Martin's nave, confessional secrets waiting. But the file's ghost lingers. Will grace outlast the night, or claim another voice in the endless choir? The fog clung to their coats like a shroud, as Holmes and Watson emerged from the warehouse's gloom into the labyrinth of Whitechapel's alleys. Midnight bells tolled from St. Martin in the Fields, their sombre peals slicing through the damp air, each strike a reminder of the night's unravelling sins. Holmes's legs trembled beneath him, not just from the chill seeping through his deerstalker, but from the cocaine's siren call still echoing in his veins. The shattered vial's memory glittered in his mind, sharper than the gas lamps flickering overhead. "John," he murmured, voice hoarse against the fog's muffling embrace. Blackwood's fled to the church. Confessional, his final sanctuary. We press on. Watson gripped his arm tighter, his walrus moustache beaded with mist, eyes scanning the shadows for lurking threats. "You're in no state, Holmes. That devil Thorne nearly had you. Rest. Let Lestrade handle the vicar." "No." Holmes shook his head, aquiline nose cutting the air like a blade. "The choir's curse binds us all." Eliza's voice in the warehouse. It pierced the haze. "Not madness, John, something divine mocking our frailties." They hailed a hansom cab, the horse's hooves clopping hollowly on cobblestones slick with drizzle. The journey blurred into a haze of swaying lanterns and passing gin-soaked revellers, their laughter brittle against the Thames' distant murmur. Holmes stared out at the fog-veiled spires, his mind a whirlwind. Logic had mapped the scandals, Eliza's debts, Thorne's gin-soaked lies, Blackwood's pilfered arms, but the hymn persisted, an eternal strain weaving through his thoughts. 39 voices, frozen in song on Christmas Eve, 1892. Witnesses swore they sang without breath, eyes glazed in rapture, collapsing only at dawn. Superstition, or grace's unrelenting call. St. Martin in the Fields loomed ahead, its steeple piercing the night like an accusatory finger. The cab rattled to a halt before the portico, where stone pillars stood sentinel amid Trafalgar Square's emptiness. Pigeons scattered from the steps, wings whispering accusations. Holmes descended, pipe clenched between teeth, though unlit, his hands too unsteady for flame. Inside, the nave stretched vast and shadowed, gas jets casting pools of amber light on pews, worn smooth by generations of penitents. The air hung heavy with incense and wax, the faint echo of midnight mass lingering like a ghost. Eliza Hawthorne knelt near the altar, raven hair spilling over her shoulders, emerald eyes lifted in silent prayer. She rose at their approach, pale skin luminous in the dimness. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson." Her voice trembled, soft as a soprano's breath. The vicar's in the confessional, ranting of judgment, the choir's wrath. He locked himself in after Thorne's arrest. Holmes nodded, grey eyes piercing the gloom toward the carved wooden booth at the nave's side. "Thank you, Miss Hawthorne. Your testimony earlier, your harmony, it steadied me. Stay here. Guard the door." She hesitated, fingers twisting her shawl. "Elias warned me of you. Reason's blade cuts deepest in the soul, but I see your tremble. The song preys on the broken." He met her gaze, the weight of her words settling like fog in his chest. "Perhaps, but truth demands the cut." Watson followed close as Holmes approached the confessional, its lattice screen a fragile veil between sinner and seeker. Muffled sobs emanated from within, punctuated by frantic whispers. "Vicar Blackwood," Holmes called, voice steady despite the ache gnawing his limbs. "Reginald Blackwood, your web phrase. Thorns in irons. Eliza sings no more lies. Emerge." A gasp from the booth, then the creak of wood. The curtain parted, revealing Blackwood's portly frame slumped against the kneeler, clerical collar askew. Flushed cheeks streaked with tears, trembling hands clutched a rosary, beads clicking like fading notes. Holmes. "You hound of logic." Blackwood's voice cracked, spectacles fogged. "Leave me to God." The choir, they knew. On Christmas Eve, as Eliza's solo swelled, the hymn took them. Eternal praise, unceasing. I silenced it with bribes, hid the ledger in Thorne's grasp. But debts devour. The parish. My legacy. Watson stepped forward, sturdy frame blocking retreat. "Vicar, innocence suffered. The singer's families grieve. Confess fully." Blackwood's eyes darted, shadows deepening the lines of his face. "Superstition, you say?" "No. Grace's fire. I embezzled for my daughter's dowry. Thorne drank the guilt away. Eliza pawned her voice for scraps. The hymn exposed us. 39 souls singing judgment till dawn. I fled here seeking absolution, but it swells again. Listen." Silence fell, thick as the fog outside. Then, faintly from the rafters above, a whisper of melody. Pure, haunting, sopranos weaving with tenors, the Gloria in excelsis Deo rising unbidden. Holmes froze, pulse racing. Not imagination. The church's very stones resonated, the sound coiling around his heart like Thorne's offered vial. Illusion, he whispered, though doubt cracked his tone. Acoustics, echoes from the night. Blackwood laughed bitterly, hands shaking. Your cocaine whispers sweeter lies, detective. I saw your hand twitch in the warehouse. Join us in the song or shatter alone. Eliza's footsteps approached, her presence a balm amid the rising strain. A vicar harmony heals. Elias taught me that. Confess to them as to God. The vicar bowed his head, rosary slipping to the floor. The ledger's ash hides nothing now. I took from the poor box for roulette dens. Thorne forged the choir's fame on gin fumes. Eliza, she knew, sang through tears. Arrest me. But the hymn returns at dawn. Mark my words. Holmes leaned against the booth, sweat tracing his gaunt features, the melody burrowing deeper. Memories surged, Baker Street solitude, Needle's kiss eclipsing Watson's warnings, cases won at morality's cost. Grace, unwanted, unearned, yet here, in this nave, it pressed like community he'd long shunned. John, he said softly, turning to Watson, escort Blackwood to Lestrade. I need air. Watson nodded, concern etching his weathered face. Holmes, go. The detective waved him off, striding toward the side chapel, the song swelling to fill the void. Alone amid stained-glass saints, their colours muted in moonlight filtering through high windows, Holmes sank onto a stone bench. The cold seeped through his trousers, grounding him as tremors racked his frame. The vial's ghost danced in his pocket. No, shattered, yet its pull eternal. Why now? Logic faltered against this spectral choir, voices pleading redemption he deemed folly. Footsteps echoed, Eliza slipping into the chapel, her emerald eyes soft with unspoken pain. You fight alone, Mr. Holmes, but the song calls us together. He looked up, dishevelled hair falling across his forehead. Miss Hawthorne, reason suffices. Always has. Not this night. She knelt beside him, voice a gentle counterpoint to the hymn. Orphaned I sang in alleys till Elias lifted me. Flawed man, yet grace through his music. You chase truth, but ignore your wreckage. Let the choir teach, effort and mercy entwined. Her words pierced, warmer than the chapel's draught. Holmes' hand steadied, the crave dulling to ember. Perhaps not alone. Dawn's first light crept through the windows, gilding the nave in gold. The hymn crested, then faded, leaving silence profound. Watson returned, Blackwood in tow, cuffs glinting. It's done, Holmes. Lestrade has them. But reports from the square, singers' families gathering, claiming miracles, visions in the fog. Holmes rose, renewed steel in his gaze. Miracles or mass delusion. Yet, the nave holds more. Blackwood's hidden chamber beneath the altar. Rumours of relics, the true ledger's copy. We descend. As they moved toward the altar, a low rumble stirred the stones, the hymn's whisper reviving. Eliza gasped, clutching her throat. It's starting again. Deeper shadows beckoned below, secrets waiting in the crypt's chill embrace. Holmes's resolve hardened, but the song's pull tugged anew. Temptation's final verse or redemption's dawn? Stone steps spiraled downward from the altar, slick with centuries of damp, each footfall echoing like a heartbeat in the earth's throat. Holmes led, lantern held high, its flame flickering against walls veined with moss and forgotten prayers etched in Latin. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of mouldering stone and something sweeter. Incense long faded, or perhaps the ghost of holly from Christmases past. Watson followed close, revolver at the ready, his breath steady despite the vice tightening in his chest. Blackwood shuffled behind, chains rattling softly, his portly frame heaving with reluctant surrender. Eliza brought up the rear, her footsteps light but resolute, emerald eyes scanning the gloom as if the shadows might sing back. The hymn lingered in Holmes's mind, not as melody, but compulsion, weaving through his thoughts like the syringe he craved. Reason, he told himself. This crypt holds ledgers, relics, proof of embezzlement, Thorne's complicity. Yet his hand trembled on the lantern, the cocaine's absence a hollow ache mirroring the vicar's laboured gasps. Why descend now, when dawn threatened above? Because truth waited, cold and unyielding, or so he insisted. They reached the chamber, a vaulted hollow where crypt air hung stagnant, lit only by their single light. Sarcophagi lined the walls, marble effigies of long-dead clergy staring sightless, their carved hands folded in eternal piety. In the centre, a wooden chest, iron-bound and padlocked, dust undisturbed save for fresh scuff marks. Holmes knelt, picking the lock with practiced fingers, the click sharp as a confession. Watson glanced at Blackwood, whose flushed cheeks paled further in the lantern's glow. "Vicar, what madness drove you to this? Hiding debts in a saint's tomb?" Blackwood swallowed, voice a rasp. "Debts from my father, Doctor. The parish crumbling, families starving in the square. Thorne promised the concert would save us, donations from lords, miracles of music. But the ledgers, they lie here with the relic, a fragment of the true cross smuggled from Jerusalem, supposed to draw pilgrims, heal the coffers." Holmes flipped open the chest, revealing stacks of yellowed books, ink-faded but damning. Entries of siphoned funds, Thorne's signature bold beside Blackwood's shaky scrawl. Beneath, wrapped in velvet, a splinter of wood, dark and ordinary. No glow, no power, just wood. "A fraud," Holmes murmured, turning the relic in his palm. "Your choir's miracle built on deceit. But the voices, 90 minutes non-stop, defying lungs and reason, not delusion." Eliza stepped forward, her raven hair catching the light like a halo in reverse. Elias knew the relic's myth. He pushed us to sing as if possessed, to sell the spectacle. But last night, something shifted. The song took hold, not from us. Before Holmes could retort, a low vibration stirred the floor, dust sifting from the ceiling like fine snow. The hymn swelled anew, not from above but from the walls themselves, muffled, resonant as if the stones themselves intoned the verses. Blackwood crossed himself, chains clinking, the saints. They sing. Holmes froze, logic fracturing. Impossible. Acoustics, echoes from the nave. "No," Watson cut in, pressing an ear to a sarcophagus. Voices, distinct, faint, layered, like prisoners calling from below. Panic flickered in Eliza's eyes, but she steadied, kneeling by the chest. Look, another latch, hidden. She pried it free, revealing a narrower passage, stairs descending further into black oblivion. Whispers emanated from it, the choir's refrain clearer now. Redemption's plea, effort entwined with mercy. Holmes's mind raced, synapses firing without chemical aid. The scuff marks, not to the chest, but beyond. Someone had come this way recently. Thorne, or... Lestrade's voice boomed from above, muffled through stone. "Holmes, the square's in uproar. Families swear their kin levitate in fog, singing still." "We go down," Holmes decided, pocketing the relic. "Truth or madness, it ends here." They descended again, the passage tightening, walls brushing shoulders. Holmes's lantern sputtered, shadows leaping like demons. His pulse thrummed with the song, each note a needle's promise denied. Why fight it alone? A voice whispered in his skull, Eliza's words from the chapel or his own unravelling. The stairs ended in a flooded antechamber, ankle-deep water icy as Thames fog. Coffins floated half-submerged, lids ajar, skeletal fingers protruding like accusations. Amid them, a grate in the floor, rusted but yielding under pressure. Holmes wrenched it open, revealing a tunnel snaking toward the river, sewage stench mingling with the hymn's purity. Watson shone his light down. By God, a rowboat, moored, and voices. Ahead. They clambered down, water sloshing, the boat creaking under their weight. Holmes poled forward, arms burning. The tunnel's curve amplifying the song to surround sound torment. Blackwood whimpered prayers. Eliza hummed counterpoint, her voice steadying them all. Light ahead, moonlight through a grate near the embankment. They emerged into the sluggish Thames, fog cloaking the water like a shroud. No choir visible, yet the hymn peaked, vibrating through the hull. There, Holmes breathed, pointing. Shapes in the mist, figures on the far bank near the old morgue by Hungerford Bridge. 39 silhouettes, swaying, mouths open in endless song. Watson rode furiously, revolver drawn. Ghosts or men? As they neared, forms solidified, not ethereal, but flesh. The choir, clothes-sodden, eyes glazed but alive. They turned, faces pale, lips moving ceaselessly. One staggered forward. Elias Thorne. Spectacles askew, gesturing wildly. Holmes seized his arm. "Thorne! The relic. You're doing." Thorne's voice cracked through song. "No." The splinter. Touched it during rehearsal. Power surged. We couldn't stop. Visions. Debts forgiven. Scandals washed clean. But it burns now. Mercy demands truth. Eliza gasped from the boat. "Elias, you hid this." He nodded, tears carving tracks in grime. "Blackwood's fraud, my ambition. The song forces confession. Listen, it names us all." The choir's harmony shifted, words emerging. Reginald's theft, Elias's fall from Oxford, even Holmes's unspoken vice, cocaine's grip, logic's lonely throne. Watson's war ghosts, Eliza's alley scars. Holmes recoiled, the exposure raw as withdrawal. "How?" "The relic," Thorne rasped. "Not fraud, real. Calls forth hidden sins, demands grace. We've sung 90 minutes in hours now. Lungs fail, but it holds us." Blackwood, in the boat, sobbed. "Forgive me. I confess. All." Figures from the square rushed the bank, families, Lestrade's men, witnessing the spectacle. The hymn crested, choir collapsing one by one, voices fading to whispers. Holmes clutched the splinter, heat pulsing through his glove. Temptation's verse: discard it, solve the case rationally, or embrace, let it name his wreckage. Dawn broke fully, gilding the Thames gold. Eliza's hand on his shoulder grounded him. "Not alone, Mr. Holmes." He exhaled, craving dulled to resolve. The breakthrough, not in logic alone, but as constables hauled the choir ashore, one figure lingered in fog, a child soloist, eyes locked on Holmes. "Mummy says you're the devil's detective. Prove her wrong." The splinter warmed anew. "More secrets or the final test? And listener, comment who you suspect. Can you solve it first?" Lestrade approached, notebook out. "Holmes, the relic. Evidence." Holmes weighed it, then pressed it into Eliza's palm. "Guard it. Truth demands more than law." She nodded, the choir's last notes echoing in silence. Yet in Holmes's pocket, a forgotten vial shard glinted, his own hymn unfinished. The crypt's shadows called back, promising deeper revelations beneath the church where the true source pulsed. Watson's hand clapped his back. "Steady, old chap. Redemption's not solved in one dawn." But Holmes gazed at the church spire piercing the mist, song's echo lingering. What if the choir never truly stopped? What lay buried still, waiting for effort and mercy to unearth it? Sherlock Holmes descended the worn stone steps into the crypt of St. Martin in the Fields, the air thickening with the scent of damp earth and ancient incense. Each footfall echoed like a judgment, the gas lamps above fading to a feeble glow that barely pierced the gloom below. Watson followed close, his lantern casting jittery shadows on walls etched with faded memorials to long-forgotten souls. Holmes's hand trembled slightly, not from cold, but from the splinter's absence in his pocket, now safe with Eliza, yet its warmth lingered in his veins like an unanswered equation. The choir's song had ceased only hours before, their bodies pulled from the Thames mud by Lestrade's men, pale and exhausted but alive. Confessions spilled in harmony, Blackwood's pilfered parish funds, Thorne's youthful indiscretions that shattered his Oxford dreams, even Eliza's hidden thefts from patrons to survive the streets. Yet Holmes knew the relic's power ran deeper, stirring not just guilt, but the marrow of the soul. His own secrets, the 7% solution that sharpened his mind while dulling his heart, the isolation he wore like a badge, had been named in that ethereal chorus, though he alone heard them clearest. Why the crypt? A hunch, born of the choir boy's parting glare and the vicar's fragmented mutterings before the constables took him away. Blackwood had whispered of a hidden chamber, sealed since the church's founding in 1721, where the splinter originated. A fragment from the true cross, smuggled from Jerusalem by a wayward crusader. Supposedly cursed or blessed to compel truth amid song. Holmes dismissed such lore as superstition, but the night's events gnawed at reason's edges. They reached a rusted iron grate padlocked and cloaked in cobwebs. Watson tugged at it futilely. "Lock tight, Holmes. Whatever's down there, it's meant to stay buried." Holmes knelt, pipe in mouth though unlit, examining the mechanism. A child's toy compared to Scotland Yard's finest. His lockpick danced in the dim light, the grate yielding with a groan that reverberated like a dirge. Beyond lay a narrow tunnel, sloping into blackness, the air now heavy with mildew and something sweeter, myrrh. "Proceed with caution, old friend," Watson murmured, revolver half drawn. "This feels less like detection and more like descent." Holmes led on, mind racing. The choir had sung for hours without breath, 90 minutes turning to dawn held by the relic's grip. 39 voices, precise number matching the church's original choristers in 1721, when plague silenced half of London. Coincidence? Or design? His cocaine craving flickered, a familiar itch urging retreat to Baker Street's syringe, but he pressed it down, fueled by the puzzle's pull. The tunnel opened into a vaulted chamber, vault walls lined with alcoves holding skeletal remains in tattered robes. At center, an altar of weathered oak, atop it a wooden coffer bound in iron etched with Latin, Veritas in cantu, truth in song. Dust motes danced in their lantern light, and Holmes approached, heart pounding not from fear, but revelation's proximity. He lifted the lid, hinges silent as prayer. Inside, nestled in velvet frayed by centuries, lay another splinter, twin to the one Eliza held, larger, pulsing faintly with inner light. Beside it, a yellowed ledger, pages brittle. Holmes lifted it carefully, Watson peering over his shoulder. Entries from 1721. The choirmaster then, one brother Elias, no relation to Thorne surely, recorded smuggling the relics during the Great Plague. Singers afflicted, lungs burning, yet compelled to hymn through fever, confessing hidden sins that spared the parish. 39 survived, their voices a miracle amid 5,000 dead in London that winter. But the final page, ink fresh as yesterday, Vicar Blackwood's hand. 1892. Financial ruin looms. Choir practice to test the relic, restore the church's fame, draw tithes. Thorne agreed, desperate for redemption. Eliza volunteered, her voice a siren's call from the streets. The song began at midnight mass, relic hidden in the organ. It bound them, forcing truths long suppressed. I watched from the vestry, too cowardly to join. Holmes's fingers traced the words, a chill unrelated to the crypt's damp. Blackwood hadn't sung, he'd orchestrated, but the relic named him anyway, across the Thames. Watson whistled low. Good Lord. Holmes. This explains the endurance, the confessions. But why the river, and that child soloist untouched? The boy. Holmes snapped the ledger shut, part of it still. He slipped the second splinter into his pocket, its warmth sinking with his pulse, stirring unwelcome clarity. Memories flooded, his brother's shadow, Mycroft's quiet disapproval. The Afghan war Watson escaped, but never left. Holmes' own abandonment of emotion for deduction's altar. A scrape echoed from the tunnel, footsteps. Eliza emerged, lantern in hand, raven hair dishevelled, emerald eyes wide but steady. Mr. Holmes, you came. The first splinter cooled in my keeping, but I felt its call. Thorne and Blackwood are in custody, babbling of grace amid their shame. Lestrade wants the relic as evidence. She glanced at the coffer, then Holmes, seeing through his composure to the tremor in his jaw. The song named you too. Cocaine's chains, the loneliness you call genius. Will you let it bind you forever? Holmes stiffened, logic's armor cracking. Miss Hawthorne, sentiment clouds judgment. This is mere chemistry. perhaps a rare toxin in the wood, inducing trance and hallucination. Yet his voice faltered, the splinter burning hotter. Watson stepped forward gently. "Holmes, we've chased shadows all night. This, it demands more. Confession, perhaps, not to law, but to yourself." Silence stretched, broken only by dripping water. Holmes unclenched his fist, revealing the vial shard from his pocket, remnant of last night's lapse. "I solve impossibilities, Watson, but this, my mind betrays me when idle. The needle fills the void." Eliza knelt beside him, her touch light on his arm. "No void too deep for light, Mr. Holmes. The relic shows wreckage, but grace rebuilds. Join us, not as detective, but seeker." The warmth spread, not burning now, but illuminating. Holmes exhaled, the craving ebbing like Thames fog at noon. For the first time, reason yielded not to chaos, but to possibility. "Very well, but rationally. We expose the full truth, Blackwood's scheme, the relic's power, no more hiding." As they ascended, the crypt's echo followed, a faint hum, as if the bones themselves approved. Lestrade waited above, with Thorne and Blackwood in irons, faces gaunt but peaceful. "Inspector," Holmes announced, "the case clarifies. Embezzlement masked as miracle." The choir's trance, psychosomatic, amplified by belief. Thorne met his gaze, spectacles askew. "Not fully, detective." The song continues in silence. "You've only begun yours." Blackwood nodded weakly. "Take the splinters. Let them sing for you." Eliza handed over the first, their fingers brushing. Holmes pocketed both, resolve hardening. But as they stepped into Trafalgar Square's bustle, midday bells tolling Christmas joy, a newsboy cried headlines. "Parish miracle, choir rises from Thames." Holmes paused, scanning faces. The child soloist darted through the crowd, clutching a crumpled hymn sheet, eyes locking on him once more. Not Devil's Man. Saviour's instrument? Watson chuckled softly. "Your move, Holmes." Yet in Holmes's coat, the splinters thrummed anew, hinting at one final secret. The choirmaster's true lineage, tied to 1721's brother Elias, and Holmes's own forgotten faith, buried deeper than any crypt. The square filled with carolers, their voices rising innocent. But Holmes heard undertones, calling him to restoration's edge. What amends awaited next? Sherlock Holmes pushed through the throng in Trafalgar Square, the midday clamour of Christmas Eve 1892, pressing in like a living tide. Horse-drawn omnibuses clattered over wet cobblestones, their bells cutting through the fog that clung low and greasy from the Thames. Vendors hawked roasted chestnuts, their smoky sweetness warring with the sharper tang of coal smoke from nearby chimneys. Yet beneath it all, Holmes heard it still, the thrumming in his coat pocket, where the two bone splinters nestled like dormant embers. They pulsed faintly against his thigh, syncing with the distant peal of St. Martin in the Fields bells, as if the church itself breathed through them. Watson trudged beside him, his sturdy frame parting the crowd with habitual authority, moustache dusted with fine mist. Lestrade followed at a discreet distance, herding Thorne and Blackwood toward a waiting police wagon, their irons clinking softly like muffled chimes. Eliza Hawthorne walked on Holmes's other side, her raven hair tucked beneath a modest bonnet, emerald eyes scanning the faces around them with quiet vigilance. The newsboy's cry echoed again, "Parish miracle, choir rises from the Thames," and heads turned, whispers rippling outward. Holmes's mind raced, cataloguing details. The child's hymn sheet bore faded ink, matching the crypt's relics, its edges frayed as if dredged from river mud. "We must verify this at once," Holmes said, his voice cutting crisp through the din. "The Yard's report claimed 39 drowned, bodies unrecovered. If they've surfaced alive..." Watson glanced at him, concern etching deeper lines into his weathered face. "Alive after 3 days submerged? Even for you, Holmes, that's a stretch beyond the rational. Miracles aren't evidence. They're the absence of it." Eliza's hand brushed Holmes's sleeve, light as a sigh. "Or evidence of something reason alone can't measure. The splinters chose you for a reason. Listen closer." He wanted to dismiss her, to dissect the phenomenon through lenses of mass hysteria or submerged air pockets, but the warmth from the crypt lingered in his veins, a counterpoint to the old itch that had clawed at him in the darkness below. No cocaine haze today, instead this insistent hum, drawing him toward the river's edge. They veered south, past Nelson's column, where pigeons scattered like grey confetti, down toward the embankment where the Thames churned sluggish and brown under leaden skies. The riverfront teemed with gawkers, a cordon of constables holding back the press. Gas lamps flickered prematurely in the gloom, casting watery reflections on the slick granite parapet. There, amid a cluster of sodden woolens and driftwood, lay the choir, 39 souls pale and blinking, wrapped in rough blankets by medics from the Thames Division. No bloating, no rigour. Their breaths fogged the chill air in shallow unison. Thorne strained against his irons at the sight, spectacles slipping down his nose. My singers. They endured, as Brother Elias foretold. Blackwood, portly frame sagging, murmured a prayer. His trembling hands clasped despite the chains. Forgiven, perhaps. The river washed us clean. Holmes knelt by the nearest figure, a tenor with hollow cheeks and mud-caked beard. "Your name?" he asked, pulse quickening as he noted the man's lips, cracked but humming faintly a melody from the crypt score. The man focused slowly, eyes clearing like fog lifting. "Jacob Hale, sir." We sang. Endless. Then light pulled us under, held us safe. No breath needed down there, saw faces in the bones, old saints welcoming. Holmes withdrew a splinter, holding it near. The humming intensified, the man's gaze locking on it. "Feel that? Truth in the relic?" Jacob nodded, voice a rasp. "It sings the founder's vow." Brother Elias bound his blood to the choir's voice, immortal harmony against despair. "You carry it now, detective. The unquiet one." Rising, Holmes felt the square's earlier peace fracture. "Unquiet? Explain." But Lestrade interrupted, cuffing Thorne forward. "Enough mysticism. Embezzlement's clear. Funds siphoned for your scandals, Vicar. Choir drugged to simulate trance, pitched into the Thames for insurance. Motive sealed." Thorne's scowl deepened, grey hair matted with sweat. "Drugging? No. Suggestion and song, power enough. And my line traces to Elias Thorne, 1721 founder. Blood calls to blood. Test it, Holmes. Your own vein whispers the same." Holmes recoiled inwardly, the splinter burning hot now, his forgotten faith, whispered tales from a Baker Street nursery. A mother humming psalms before logic supplanted lullabies. Buried, yes, but not excised. Watson watched him, walrus moustache twitching with unspoken worry. Eliza stepped closer to the choir, kneeling by a young alto shivering under her blanket. The girl clutched a locket, identical to the soloist's hymn sheet motif. "You're safe now," Eliza whispered. "The song protected you." The alto gripped her hand. It called for him, the detective. Says he's kin to the silence. Kin. The word lodged in Holmes's throat like Thames silt. He turned abruptly, striding along the embankment away from the crowd, the fog swallowing his footsteps. Watson caught up, boots splashing puddles. "Holmes, slow down. This ties to your past, your brother's shadow, your family's estrangement. Mycroft wrote last month urging reconciliation before the abyss claims me," Holmes finished, gaunt cheeks tightening. "I've no time for sentiment. The case demands you face the wreckage you've wrought," Watson cut in, voice steady as Afghan gunfire. "Your cocaine dens, the clients abandoned mid-crisis. Eliza sees it, the choir feels it. Amends start here." They paused at a derelict pier, rotting timbers creaking under wind-whipped waves. Holmes pulled the splinters free, their pale gleam defying the gloom. "Rationality falters, old friend. Thorne's lineage, verifiable via parish rolls. Mine. Perhaps the founder's blood diluted through centuries awakening now. But why me?" Watson placed a hand on his shoulder, firm and unyielding. "Because grace seeks the broken. You've solved crimes, now solve yourself. Return to 221B. Rest. I'll handle Lestrade." Holmes pocketed the relics, their thrum now a steady heartbeat matching his own. "Rest?" The word tasted foreign, like clean sheets after fever. As they retraced steps, the child soloist appeared again, darting from an alley, hymn sheet extended. "For you, sir." The silent verse, Elias's last. Holmes took it, unfolding parchment yellowed with age. Script swirled. The unquiet blood shall silence the storm, binding detective to divine refrain. Eliza read over his shoulder, breath catching. Your storm, Mr. Holmes. The choir rose for this. Back at the church steps, Blackwood awaited trial's deferral, eyes meeting Holmes's. Take my confession full, detective. Funds stolen, yes, but choir's trance true. Relics proved it in you. Thorne nodded, gaunt frame straightening. Join the restoration. Sing with us, kin. Holmes hesitated, the square's carolers swelling around them, innocent voices weaving with the splinter's undertone. Restoration. Amends to Watson, to forgotten kin, to the void reason couldn't fill. But as Lestrade loaded the prisoners, a shadow detached from the fog, a figure in widow's weeds, face veiled, approaching with purposeful stride. Holmes's piercing grey eyes narrowed. Mycroft's emissary, or deeper wreckage surfacing. The woman lowered her veil, revealing features eerily familiar, his estranged sisters, come from the countryside at last, eyes blazing with old hurts and newborn hope. Sherlock. Mother's psalms weren't lies. Face us now. Watson's hand tightened on his arm, Eliza's gaze steady. The thrum crescendoed, demanding choice. Reason or refrain? The peer's ghosts whispered, and Holmes stepped forward, the first crack in his fortress widening. But what confession would shatter it completely? Sherlock Holmes stood frozen on the frost-kissed steps of St. Martin-in-the-Fields, the weight of his sister's gaze pulling at threads long buried in his mind. Eliza Holmes, 10 years his junior, had crossed the miles from their rural estate near Godalming. Her black mourning veil now discarded like a shed skin, revealing a face etched with the same sharp angles as his own, high cheekbones shadowed by grief, eyes the colour of storm-tossed slate. She was 32, no longer the willful girl he'd left behind when logic called him to London, but a woman forged in silence and loss. Sherlock, she said, her voice a low timbre carrying the cadence of country chapels. Mother's psalms echoed in that choir. You heard them too, didn't you? The unquiet ones. He felt the relic's pulse in his coat pocket, twin splinters of ancient yew wood warm against his thigh, as if alive with the founder's blood that bound him inexplicably to this cursed melody. The square bustled faintly around them, Trafalgar Square's gas lamps flickering through the Thames fog like hesitant stars, vendors hawking roasted chestnuts whose scent mingled with coal smoke and the faint briny tang of the river. Carolers drifted past, their voices a harmless counterpoint to the relentless hymn thrumming in his veins. Jerusalem's walls rebuilt in silent stone, blood calls to blood, refrain unbroken. Watson shifted beside him, his sturdy frame a bulwark, moustache twitching with unspoken concern. Holmes cleared his throat, the sound raspy from disuse and the cocaine haze that still lingered in his blood. Eliza. You shouldn't be here. Mycroft warned me of your inquiries. She stepped closer, skirts whispering against the slick cobblestones, her gloved hand clutching a worn prayer book, its leather cracked like parched earth. Inquiries. Brother, I've prayed for you these 15 years, since father drank himself to ruin and you vanished into your pipes and puzzles. Mother died whispering your name, begging grace for her prodigal sons. And now this choir, 39 souls locked in eternal song. Lestrade's men spoke of your trance, the relics, our blood. Holmes's mind raced, piecing fragments, the founder's descendants scattered through history, diluted lineage awakening in crisis. Eliza, the overlooked sibling carrying the strain as he did, her rural isolation preserving what his urban detachment had nearly erased. But confession, his pulse quickened, the cocaine craving a distant itch beneath the hymn's compulsion. Eliza Hawthorne drew near, her emerald eyes steady, raven hair escaping its pins in the damp wind. Miss Holmes, she said softly, the choirmaster's notes revealed it. Thorne's ledgers hid not just scandal, but lineage. Thorne himself a distant cousin binding the trance to St. Martin's bloodline. Your brother's the key, but you're the lock. Eliza's gaze flicked to Eliza, softening with recognition. The soprano, They said you broke the silence first. With a voice like angels wept. Thorne's fall from Oxford. My husband's uncle knew the whispers. Infidelity, yes, but a deeper curse. The founders vow to sing until redemption claimed the line. Vicar Blackwood, handcuffs glinting loosely now under Lestrade's deferral, shuffled forward, his portly form diminished, cheeks pale without their flush. Mr. Holmes, she speaks truth. My embezzlement shamed us all, but the choir's vigil predates my sins. The founder's bones beneath the altar. U-box splintered open by Thames floods last equinox. I meant to sell them for the parish debts. Instead, they sang. Thorne nodded from the church doorway, spectacles fogged, his scowl softened to weary resolve. Join us inside, family. The restoration begins where the fall did. Holmes hesitated, the square's chill seeping through his ulster. Fog coiling like spectral fingers around Nelson's column looming above. Restoration. The word clashed with his inner architecture, deduction's clean lines against Grace's messy sprawl. Yet Watson's hand on his elbow urged him forward, a silent anchor pulling him toward the sanctuary's glow. They entered St. Martin in the Fields together, the nave hushed save for the echo of dripping candles and the faint undertone persisting in Holmes's ears. Pews gleamed under gaslight, polished by generations of the faithful, while the organ loft hung silent, its pipes like frozen sentinels. Eliza lit a taper, flame dancing shadows across stained glass depicting shepherds in Bethlehem snow. Ironic this Christmas Eve, with no snow but endless drizzle pattering the leaded panes. Ilara knelt at the altar rail, prayer book open to Psalms. Read with me, Sherlock. Mother's favourite. Out of the depths have I cried unto thee, O Lord. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but the raw edge of long-held hurt. Holmes knelt beside her, joints protesting, the relics burning now like brands. He mouthed the words, logic fracturing as memory flooded. Childhood evenings in Godalming Vicarage, mother at the pianoforte, father swaying drunk in the corner, Mycroft already plotting Whitehall ascent. Ilara, small and fierce, harmonizing perfectly. He'd fled that chaos for Baker Street's order, cocaine a false clarity masking the void. I abandoned you, he whispered, voice cracking like thin ice. After Mother's death, your letters. I burned them. Cases demanded purity. She placed her hand over his, calloused from farm work he'd never imagined, and I let pride keep me away. But the choir called us both. Thorne confessed fully to me en route. His affair bore a child hidden in workhouse shadows, whose line split to us. The trance fed on unconfessed blood debts. Yours, the morphine dens, cocaine vials shattering reason. Mine, resenting God's silence on our losses. Watson stood vigil nearby, eyes misty. Holmes, old chap, confession's no weakness. It's the evidence you've overlooked. Blackwood murmured agreement, trembling hands clasped. My theft confessed to Lestrade, parish saved by anonymous donor, perhaps Mycroft's hand. But the choir needs your voices to end it. Thorne approached, hymn sheets in hand. Sing the founder's refrain, kin, bind the storm. Holmes rose, relics in palm, their wood veined like exposed nerves. The hymn swelled internally, no longer torment, but invitation. He parted lips, notes emerging halting. Jerusalem's walls rebuilt in silent stone, voice rusty, untrained, yet harmonizing with Ilara's clear soprano, Eliza weaving alto threads. The nave stirred. Faint echoes from crypt below as if 39 shades leaned in, candles flared brighter, fog outside parting briefly to silver moonlight. Holmes felt the thrum recede, cocaine's grip loosening like fog burned by dawn. Not erasure, but balance, reason yielding to refrain. Yet as harmony peaked, a low rumble shook the foundations, stone dust sifted from arches, and from the vestry shadows Lestrade burst in, face ashen. Holmes, another body's found, choir's final soloist, vanished last night from the crypt. Throat marked with yew splinters, eyes open in song, and clutched in his fist, your monogrammed syringe case from the pier. Holmes's blood chilled, Ilara gasping beside him. Planted? Or his own wreckage resurfacing? The harmony fractured, relics cooling as accusation dawned. Had confession freed the choir, or unleashed something darker still? Lestrade's boots echoed like judgment on the flagstones of St. Martin in the Fields, his lantern swinging wild shadows across the nave. Holmes stood frozen, the relic slipping from his fingers to clatter softly against the stone. The syringe case, his own, monogrammed in silver thread, last seen shattered on the pier weeks ago, glinted accusingly in the inspector's gloved hand. Ilara's gasp hung in the air, her emerald eyes wide with betrayal's first sting, while Watson stepped forward, his sturdy frame a bulwark between friend and fray. "Inspector, this is madness," Watson barked, voice steady despite the tremor in his mustache. "Holmes has been here all night, singing with the rest of us. Plant evidence? In a house of God." Lestrade's face, etched deeper by fog-damp chills, twisted in weary skepticism. "Singing shades don't plant syringes, Doctor. The body, poor Silas Wren, last of the original soloists, is fresh in the crypt below. Throat splintered with yew from the founder's wreath, eyes frozen mid-note, just like the others. And this, clutched in his rigid fist, your man's initials, S.H., plain as the Thames. Motive. The choir's curse ends when he solves it, or so the whispers say. Now it's murder, and Scotland Yard don't chase ghosts." Holmes retrieved the case, fingers tracing its familiar engraving. The cocaine residue faint but damning under candlelight. His mind raced, synapses firing through the receding fog of withdrawal. Visions of dens in Limehouse, vials crushed under heel in futile vows. Not planted clumsily, too precise, echoing his own relic's return. Someone, or something, orchestrating closure, framing the detective to force final confession. The harmony they'd woven moments ago now mocked him, notes lingering in his throat like swallowed glass. Elias Thorne hovered at the altar's edge, his wire-rimmed spectacles fogged, thinning hair slick with nervous sweat. "Silas was my anchor," he murmured, voice cracking like old vellum. "Taught me the refrain as a boy. If Holmes—" "No accusations from you, choir master," Lestrade snapped, but his eyes softened fractionally. "You've confessed your sins already. Affair, hidden kin." Vickers handed his ledgers to the yard. "But this points straight to Baker Street." Vicar Blackwood clutched his clerical collar, portly frame sagging against a pew, flushed cheeks paling to ash. "We've bared our souls here, Inspector. Embezzlement, debts, blood secrets. The choir quiets when truths surface. Let Holmes sing his piece. Perhaps the shades demand it." Holmes met Ilara's gaze, her raven hair dishevelled from their shared vigil, pale skin luminous in the flaring candlelight. Kin through Thorne's shadowed line, she'd placed her hand over his earlier, farm-calloused yet tender, pulling him from reason's isolation. Now doubt clouded those eyes, mirroring his own fracturing certainty. The cocaine's grip had loosened in harmony, but this accusation tightened it anew, temptation whispering escape in a vial, flight from the nave's unforgiving light. "I make no denial," Holmes said evenly, voice a scalpel dissecting the tension. "The case is mine, lost amid my indiscretions. But the timing reeks of design. Wren vanished last night, post our partial refrain. Someone exploits the choir's logic. Confessions break the trance. But mine remains half-buried. Watson knows the depths, Afghan ghosts, morphine haze post-Mary's death." Watson nodded gravely, weathered face creasing deeper. "Aye, and I've dragged him from worse. But Holmes, this crosses to flesh and blood crime. Lestrade, check the crypt for footprints, not phantoms." The inspector huffed, gesturing to constables spilling from the vestry like ink blots. "Fine, but you're all detained till dawn, church sealed. No escapes on Christmas morn." As Lestrade descended the spiral stairs to the crypt, their footsteps fading into damp echoes, Holmes sank onto a pew, the wood groaning under him. The nave's chill seeped through his greatcoat, Thames fog pressing at stained-glass windows, depicting shepherds and stars. 39 voices hummed faintly now. Not torment but urgent plea, relics pulsing warm in his pocket. His arc from detached logic to this, vulnerability exposed, kin discovered, addiction's wreckage paraded, felt like the detective's greatest unraveling. Ilara knelt beside him, her soprano's breath warm against his gaunt cheek. Father Thorne spoke true. We're bound by blood unspoken. Your mind pierces veils, but the heart, it sings what reason fears. Confess it all, Sherlock. Not to yardmen, but to us. The choir waits. Thorne nodded, hymn sheets trembling in his gaunt hands. Silas held the founder's secret longest. Your great-uncle, Holmes, through my indiscretion. He resented the curse's toll, blamed reason's heir. Perhaps he staged this to force your hand. Watson paced, walrus moustache twitching. Or the true tempter. Blackwood's debts drew shady lenders, opium ties to your dens, Holmes. Motive entwined. Blackwood protested weakly from his pew. Lies, my confession cleanses. Silence fell as rumbling returned, subtler now, like breath in lungs long still. Dust sifted from the crypt trapdoor, and a constable's shout pierced up. Inspector! Wren's not alone. 39 coffins cracked open, empty, but voices, singing from the walls. Lestrade re-emerged, ashen, lantern trembling, stones veined like the relics, Holmes, hymns carving through mortar. Your doing? Holmes rose, piercing grey eyes alight despite the vice of accusation. No. Invitation accepted. The choir seeks completion, not vengeance. Ilara gripped his arm, her ethereal form steadying his angular frame. Sing with me. Kin. Full refrain, your wreckage laid bare. The group encircled the altar, Watson hesitant, Thorne resolute, Blackwood prayerful. Holmes parted lips, voice gaining strength. Jerusalem's walls, rebuilt in silent stone, voices unbound by fleshly chains alone. Ilara's soprano wove in, pure as dawn fog lifting. Eliza's alto. Wait, no. Her essence merged, the soloist's spirit perhaps lingering. Harmony swelled, nave vibrating, candles guttering to divine glow. Memories flooded homes. Baker Street haze, cocaine needles kiss eclipsing cases. Abandonment of family law for pure deduction. Resentment of Watson's faith, a crutch for weak minds. Now, aloud, woven into melody. I chased shadows, blind to my own abyss. Vials shattered reason, isolated soul. Forgive the man who solved crimes yet lost himself. The rumble peaked, then hushed. Crypt echoes joined, 39 shades harmonizing, fog outside swirling to crystalline starlight. Syringe case warmed in Holmes' pocket, residue evaporating like mist. Lestrade watched, stunned, as constables murmured amends, but as peace settled, a shadow detached from the vestry. A figure cloaked in yew, face obscured, clutching a final relic shard. Not Wren, not Thorne, a voice distorted yet familiar. The final soloist confesses, or joins the choir eternal. Holmes whirled, heart pounding against ribs, long armored by intellect. Who frames the framer? The harmony teetered, relics scorching as the figure lunged, him twisting to dirge. Dawn's light pierced windows, but darkness clung, demanding one last truth from the detective's depths. The fog-laden dawn clawed through the stained-glass windows of St. Martin in the Fields, casting fractured rainbows across the nave like shattered promises. Sherlock Holmes spun toward the vestry shadow, his deerstalker askew, the syringe case in his pocket now a dead weight, its temptations burned away by the night's unearthly chorus. The cloaked figure lunged, yew branches rustling like dry bones, the relic shard glinting, a jagged piece of ancient mortar, etched with faint hymn notes, pulsing with an inner heat that seared the air. "Who are you?" Holmes demanded, his voice a whip-crack amid the dying echoes of the choir's harmony. His piercing grey eyes narrowed, cataloguing details even as adrenaline surged. The figure's height matched Thorne's but moved with a fluidity alien to the choirmaster's stiffness. The cloak smelled not of church incense, but of Thames mud and opium dens, a whiff from Holmes's own shadowed past. The figure halted, hood slipping back just enough to reveal a face twisted in anguish. Mrs. Agnes Whitaker, the church's widowed organist, her grey-streaked hair matted, eyes wild with a fervour that bordered on madness. Agnes! Watson gasped from the altar circle, his walrus moustache twitching in disbelief, sturdy frame tensing as if ready to charge. Lestrade's hand flew to his whistle, constables shifting uneasily behind him, their lanterns casting jittery pools of light. She clutched the shard tighter, knuckles blanching. "The final soloist," she hissed, voice distorting like wind through crypt vents. Eliza's voice was mine to silence. Her purity threatened the truth we've buried. 39 souls, bound not by stone, but by our sins. Confess, detective, or join them. Holmes's mind raced, piecing the fragments. Agnes, overlooked in every interview, her fingers calloused from keys and hidden ledgers, the faint scars on her palms from relic excavations she'd dismissed as gardening mishaps. The way the organ swelled unnaturally during rehearsals, as if feeding on the choir's trapped echoes. You'd frame Thorne, poison Blackwood's tea with relic dust to mimic the hauntings, all to hoard the embezzled funds yourself. Agnes laughed, a brittle sound that clashed with the morning's first bird calls outside. Funds. This parish devours the weak. I found the crypt first, Wren's secret chamber, voices promising fortune if the choir completed its eternal vigil. Eliza discovered it too, her soprano piercing the veil. I silenced her in the fog, staged the vanishings to draw you here, Holmes, the one man who might unravel it without faith's blinders. But you hesitate now, don't you? Cocaine's ghost whispers louder than reason. Ilara stepped forward, her ethereal form shimmering like mist off the Thames, raven hair framing emerald eyes that held no judgment, only quiet knowing. "Kin," she murmured to Holmes, her voice a silken thread weaving through the tension. "The shard burns because it feeds on denial. Lay it down, Agnes. The choir sings for release, not your chains." Holmes felt the weight of his own abyss pressing in. The Baker Street nights blurred by 7% solution, cases solved while his soul frayed. Watson's patient gaze enduring the barbs Holmes flung to mask vulnerability, the family letters burned unopened. Logic's fortress against sentiment. For the first time, deduction faltered, yielding to something warmer, unnameable. "Watson," he said softly, revolver steady in his grip but not raised. "We've chased phantoms, but this is flesh and frailty. Agnes, the voices aren't vengeance, they're echoes of your guilt, amplified by these relics. Drop it." The organist wavered, shard glowing hotter, her face contorting as phantom harmonies clawed from the walls, Jerusalem's walls rebuilt in silent stone. Blackwood, portly frame trembling, clerical collar straightening as resolve hardened his flushed cheeks. "Agnes, my dear, we've all embezzled grace in our time. I hid debts, Thorne silenced scandals. But the choir. They were parishioners, lost in the 1666 blaze, souls tethered by Wren's hubris, promising eternal music for the church's glory. You didn't silence Eliza, you woke them, binding more with your fear." Thorne nodded, wire-rimmed spectacles fogged, thinning hair slick with sweat. "Her affair was mine, Vicar. Scandal enough without ghosts. But the voices, they judged us all." Agnes lunged again, not at Holmes but toward the altar, shard aimed at the heart of the choir's relic mosaic. "No more solos," she shrieked, madness cracking her voice. The nave shuddered, pews groaning as if the 39 stirred anew, fog coiling thicker inside despite the dawn. Watson tackled her gently, army surgeon's precision disarming the shard without harm. It clattered free, cooling instantly, hymns fading to whispers. Lestrade clapped irons on her wrists, muttering about asylums over Bedlam. But Holmes knelt by the shard, angular face softening in the divine light, now steady through the windows. Ilara knelt beside him, her hand on his. Warm, real, no spectre. Eliza's spirit, perhaps, or grace incarnate. "You've carried this alone too long," she said. "The choir releases with truth, not chains." Memories cascaded through Holmes. The war-torn Watson pulling him from overdose haze, Blackwood's faltering sermons echoing his own isolation, Thorne's scowls mirroring self-loathing. "I confess," he whispered, voice raw. "Cocaine chained me as relics chained them. I solved crimes to evade my soul's crypt. Forgive the detective who saw all but himself." The crypt below hummed approval. stone veining smoothing, voices rising in full joyous refrain, 39 strong ascending like incense. Fog outside burned off, Trafalgar Square stirring with early vendors' cries, the Thames gleaming silver. Agnes sagged in Lestrade's grip, tears carving tracks through grime. It ends. Finally. Watson clapped Holmes's shoulder, eyes moist under the moustache. Old chap, you've rebuilt more than walls. But as constables led Agnes away, a final tremor rippled through the nave. From the crypt stairs, a child's voice echoed, small, pure, unaccounted for among the 39. "Papa," it called, footsteps ascending. Thorne paled. Blackwood crossed himself. Holmes rose, heart clenching. Not all echoes were silenced. The true final soloist approached, face veiled in morning light, demanding answers no logic could evade. Peace fractured anew, the detective's transformation tested by innocence's unforeseen demand. The morning light pierced the stained-glass windows of St. Martin-in-the-Fields like hesitant fingers, casting fractured rainbows across the nave's worn flagstones. Sherlock Holmes stood frozen, his gaunt frame silhouetted against the altar, grey eyes widening as the child's voice echoed up from the crypt stairs once more. "Papa." It was small, insistent, laced with a purity that cut through the lingering fog like a silver bell. Footsteps pattered upward, light, uneven, as if belonging to someone too young to navigate the shadows with ease. Elias Thorne staggered back against a pew, his wire-rimmed spectacles slipping down his nose, thinning grey hair dishevelled from the night's frenzy. His scowl twisted into something raw, paternal terror, etching lines deeper into his gaunt face. "No," he whispered, hands trembling as they clutched the edge of the wood. Not her. God, not little Miriam. Vicar Reginald Blackwood crossed himself again, his portly form heaving with laboured breaths, clerical collar still askew, flushed cheeks paling to ash. The choir's hymn had swelled to a triumphant crescendo moments before, 39 voices ascending in ethereal harmony, their stone-veined prisons smoothing under the weight of confessions. Agnes writhed in Lestrade's irons nearby, her shrieks silenced to mutters, grime-streaked face slack with exhaustion. But this was no ghostly remnant. The air hummed with life, warm and insistent. Dr. John Watson moved first, his sturdy build cutting through the tension like a surgeon's scalpel. "Steady now," he called down the stairs, his walrus moustache twitching with concern, weathered face set in the resolve of Afghan battlefields. "Come up, child. You're safe." He glanced at Holmes, eyes moist beneath the bushy brows. "Whatever this is, we've faced worse together." Holmes felt the cocaine's old phantom itch in his veins, a reflex to retreat into logic's cold embrace. But Eliza Hawthorne, her raven hair framing emerald eyes that now gleamed with mortal warmth, squeezed his hand tighter. Her pale skin, once ethereal in the fog, bore the faint scars of street-singing nights. The soprano soloist who had vanished into the choir's legend now stood solid, her presence a bridge between crypt and sanctuary. "Listen," she urged softly, her voice a melody unbroken by the madness. "The truth calls its own." The footsteps crested the stairs. A girl emerged, no more than 8, her simple wool dress torn at the hem. Raven curls tangled like Eliza's own. Miriam Thorne blinked into the light, emerald-flecked eyes wide with confusion, clutching a small porcelain doll cracked from some forgotten fall. "Papa!" She ran forward, arms outstretched, dodging Lestrade's instinctive reach. Thorne dropped to his knees, enveloping her in a fierce embrace, sobs racking his frame. "My girl. How?" The scandal that cost him Oxford whispered in the air. The affair the hidden child spirited away to a countryside aunt, presumed lost to typhus fever years ago. But here she stood, flesh and breath, her small chest rising against his. Blackwood sank onto a pew, hands clasped in prayer, trembling fingers interlacing. The church's debts, the embezzled funds meant for orphans, Miriam's presumed death had been the vicar's deepest secret, a lie to cover his own greed. "I told Elias she was gone," he murmured, voice cracking. "To keep him singing, to bind the choir's power to our desperation." The relics. They preserved more than voices. Holmes knelt slowly, his deerstalker cap discarded somewhere in the fray, dishevelled black hair falling across his aquiline nose. The detective's mind raced, piecing the impossible. The choir's 39 weren't mere ghosts, but echoes amplified by ancient reliquaries beneath the crypt, fueled by unspoken sins. Agnes had been the catalyst, her madness from unpaid debts twisting her into the tempter, wielding shards of those relics to summon the unrest. But Miriam, hidden alive in a sealed alcove, fed scraps by Thorne's guilty visits, her voice the unaccounted 40th, pure enough to unravel the spell. Watson clapped a hand on Holmes's shoulder, the gesture grounding. "You've done it, old chap." The crypt quiets. "Feel it?" Indeed, the stone hummed softer now, veining faded to mere cracks. The fog outside Trafalgar Square dissipating into crisp winter air. Vendors' cries filtered through, mulled wine and chestnuts, the Thames' silver gleam mocking the night's chill. Eliza, Ilara no longer a spectre, knelt beside Miriam, humming a lullaby fragment from the choir's repertoire, her ethereal beauty softened by maternal instinct. But Holmes's heart clenched anew. His own wreckage surfaced. The cocaine vials shattered in 221B Baker Street. Watson's patient pulls from overdose haze. The isolation that mirrored Thorne's scowls and Blackwood's facades. "I see it now," he said, voice raw, piercing grey eyes locking on the child. "Truth demands not just intellect but grace. I've chased puzzles to evade my chains, hurt those who saw my potential when shadows blinded me." Miriam looked up, doll forgotten, her small hand reaching for Holmes. "Are you the man who makes ghosts sing happy?" Her innocence pierced him deeper than any needle. He nodded, throat tight. "Something like that. And you, little one, are the solo that sets them free." Lestrade hauled Agnes toward the doors, her mutters fading into the square's bustle. The inspector shot Holmes a grudging nod. "Reckon this one's yours? Holmes' miracles and madhouses your department?" As Thorne rocked Miriam, whispering apologies into her curls, Blackwood rose, steadier now. The parish rebuilds, he vowed. No more shadows. Confessions pave the way. Eliza stood, linking arms with Watson, her emerald eyes meeting Holmes. "Community mends what solitude breaks. Will you walk with us?" Holmes hesitated. The addict's fear flickering, the pull of old haunts, the Baker Street pipe tempting retreat. But Watson's loyal gaze, Thorne's redemption in his daughter's arms, the choir's final fading refrain of hope, they anchored him. "Yes," he breathed. "Forward." The group emerged into Trafalgar Square, gas lamps flickering out under the climbing sun, drizzle yielding to tentative blue sky. Carriage wheels splashed through melting slush, distant bells tolling Christmas morn. Miriam skipped ahead, doll swinging, her laughter mingling with street children's cheers. Yet, as they crossed toward the Strand, a shadow detached from Nelson's column, an envelope sealed with black wax thrust into Holmes's path by a ragged urchin who vanished into the crowd. The detective's pulse quickened, scrawled across the front. "The 40th singer lives, but the composer demands encore." Inside, a single relic shard gleamed, humming faintly. Whose hand had forged this final summons? The church's peace teetered, Holmes's transformation facing one last, unforeseen crescendo. Holmes's fingers trembled as he broke the black wax seal, the envelope's paper crisp against the damp chill of Trafalgar Square. The relic shard inside caught the weak morning light, its faint hum vibrating through his palm like a distant heartbeat. Around him, the group's tentative joy fractured. Watson's moustache twitched in concern, Eliza's emerald eyes widened, and Thorne clutched Miriam closer, the girl's laughter stilled by the urchin's vanishing sprint into the crowd. "What devilry is this now?" Watson murmured, peering over Holmes's shoulder as pigeons scattered from the paving stones, their wings slicing the thinning fog. The detective unfolded the note fully, his mind racing ahead of the words. "The 40th singer lives, but the composer demands encore." Below, an address scrawled in jagged ink. "The derelict crypt beneath St. Martin in the Fields, Undercroft. Return the shard by vespers, or the silence claims the child. Miriam." Thorne's face drained of color, his wire-rimmed spectacles slipping down his nose. They know about her. my little soloist. Blackwood crossed himself, his portly frame sagging against a lamppost, the gas flame guttering low. The crypt, forsaken since the plague years. No light reaches there, only echoes. Holmes pocketed the shard, its warmth seeping into his veins like the old cocaine rush he fought so hard to bury. Reason screamed forgery, a desperate ploy by Agnes or some remnant of the vicar's embezzlement scheme. Yet the hum pulsed in rhythm with the choir's phantom refrain, that endless silent night, which had bound 39 souls to the rafters. Faith's intrusion mocked his logic, whispering of composers beyond mortal grasp. "We end this today," Holmes declared, his voice steady despite the addict's itch clawing at his resolve. Watson summoned Lestrade discreetly. "Eliza Thorne, guard Miriam at the vicarage. Blackwood, your keys to the Undercroft." Eliza stepped forward, her raven hair tousled by the breeze off the Thames, pale skin flushed with defiance. "Not without me. I've sung in shadows deeper than yours, Mr. Holmes. The music led us here. It will guide us through." Thorne nodded, kissing Miriam's forehead before handing her to Blackwood. "Go with the vicar, love. Daddy's composing one last verse." As the group splintered, Holmes and Watson plunged back toward the church, the square's Christmas revelers parting like mist, drunken carolers with mulled wine breath, vendors hawking roasted chestnuts whose smoky scent twisted Holmes's empty stomach. His mind catalogued clues. The shard matched fragments from the choir loft, etched with Aramaic runes unearthed during Blackwood's renovations. The composer. Elias? No. His redemption rang true. Agnes escaped from Lestrade's grasp. Her mutters had hinted at deeper vendettas. The church loomed, its spire piercing the clearing sky, but beneath, the Undercroft stairs beckoned like a vein to the heart. Holmes descended first, lantern in hand, the air thickening with mildew and forgotten incense. Stone walls wept condensation, each step echoing off alcoves stacked with crumbling ledgers, Blackwood's hidden debts, Thorne's scandalous sheet music yellowed by time. Watson followed, revolver at the ready, his sturdy frame filling the narrow passage. "Steady, Holmes. This reeks of trap. Your mind's a vice today. Don't let it squeeze you back to the syringe." The detective paused at the crypt door, iron-bound oak scarred by centuries. "I see clearer now than in Baker Street haze. Truth isn't cold, it bleeds." The lock yielded to Blackwood's key, hinges groaning like damned souls. Inside, the crypt sprawled, a vaulted chamber where plague pits had been sealed, now cluttered with reliquaries and dust-shrouded pews. A single candle flickered at the far end, illuminating a figure shrouded in clerical robes, face hidden by a hood. Before them, chained to an altar stone, writhed a young woman, gaunt, wild-eyed, her voice rising in fractured soprano. "The 40th, Holmes breathed. Not Miriam." Another lost voice. The figure turned, hood falling back to reveal not Elias or Agnes, but a stranger, gaunt, late 50s. With fevered eyes and a conductor's baton clutched like a scepter. Brother Silas, once Thorne's rival at Oxford, fallen further into opium dens than scandal alone could drag a man. "You chase echoes, Holmes," Silas rasped, his voice a corroded melody. "The choir was mine, 39 talents I silenced, to perfect the eternal hymn. Blackwood's debts funded my crypt. Thorne's pride hid my score. But you disrupted the crescendo." Watson's revolver steadied. "Murder for music. You're the composer of Graves." Silas laughed, a hollow chime, waving the baton. "The shard unlocks it all. Return it, and the 40th sings free. Refuse, and she joins the rafters. Your doing, detective of despair." Holmes advanced, shard humming louder, syncing with the woman's pleas. "Her name, Hidemar."